we're going live in a second. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:02 on Tuesday, March the 1st. I am in chambers with CAO DeJong, CFO Rook, Municipal Coordinator Duarte, and Councillor Abbott. Online are Councillors Barmere and Bain, and I understand that Councillor Cunliffe is absent this evening. So I will call the meeting to order, and we will immediately go to the closed portion of the meeting. And unless there's some additions, CAO, the one proposed topic is intergovernmental affairs. Does anything change?
No, that'll cover it.
Thank you very much. Any new sections? Nope. I think that is no. Okay, so proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public are intergovernment affairs, and that the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the community charter, and where required, the council does consider that matters could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. And those sections are section 90, subsection 1, G, K, and N. Council.
Sorry, there's an H in there as well.
Thank you. Let's try that again. Section 90, subsections 1, G, H, K, and N. Council anticipates reconvening the open meeting to discuss the open agenda items after we come from closed. Councillors, are you fine with the reasons for closed? And if so, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Thank you. To the public, we will say goodbye to the gallery for the time being and see you shortly. Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, 7 p.m., March the 1st. I'm Mayor Ron McLaughlin, and I am in chambers with CAO Peter DeJong, CFO Pamela Rook, Municipal Coordinator Paula Duarte, and Councillor Abbott. Councillors Bain and Barmere are in attendance virtually. Councillor Cunliffe is absent this evening.
The acoustics are really terrible, Ron. I'm not sure if you guys can adjust something.
Thank you. We'll pause for a minute and let our tech team.
How about now, Norm?
Perfect. Good. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you all. Thanks for pausing. We have just come out of a closed portion of the meeting, and we will be reporting out at the outcome of that meeting at the end of the public meeting, which we're about to start. Put forward a motion to adopt the agenda. Can I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Any changes, amendments, deletions? Councillors, I don't see a hand. CAO, are you good?
Yep.
Good, all good. Call the motion. All those in favor of the agenda as in our package, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no. Yes. Thank you. Carried. Public participation. We have a couple of people in the gallery. If you'd like to unmute, you don't have to turn your camera on if you choose not to. Cover a topic of your choice for 2 minutes, please come forward now. Last chance before I go. Gone. Thank you very much to the public for attending. We'll go to the public delegation requests, and these have got a 10-minute maximum. And the first one will be Val Morton regarding the native plant garden, and I'll hold off on the recommendation at this time. Val, if you can unmute, which you are, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm just talking about the resolution to possibly change the name of the native plant garden, where I've been working for about 12 years. I've been working very closely with Mary Miles, who was one of the main people who started the garden back in about 2009. And she's been unable to work there for about 3 years. So Tish Pike and I are really the ones who do all the work now. And we're sort of feeling we're getting a little bit older and sort of have to pass the reins on to some younger people eventually. And part of the process is to try to update the appearance of the garden to some extent. And so that means maybe planting some more plants, but mainly we're looking at the signage. The entrance sign is actually quite faded and doesn't really look too great right now. So that's one of the main signs that I've been working on. And as well as there's a big bird sign that we made to go along with the bird friendly group. And we're doing some smaller signs for some of the individual plants. So it's just like a work in progress. But as I'm working on the entrance sign, we've been thinking about the possibility of changing the name. Right now it says Lions Bay Native Plant Garden. And I thought this might be an opportune time to honor Mary's contributions to the garden, since she's been the main one who's done a lot of the work there. Obviously, there's many people who helped out, Louis Peterson, Tony Cox, those people, and others that I don't know because I wasn't there at the beginning. But having worked with Mary for so many years, I really know how much time and effort and sort of her heart and soul went into the garden. So I thought that it was time to maybe at least suggest that we could change it. And I thought possibly saying Mary Coomber Miles Native Plant Garden. That's the way she signs her artwork. And there will be examples of her artwork as there are now, but they will be improved. And that's the way she signs her artwork. So that's a possible name. We could leave out the Coomber part and say Mary Miles Native Plant Garden, or possibly if people don't like the use of the word native, we could bring in the word indigenous there. So it's really, that's the main idea behind what we're trying to accomplish. And we're just looking for the approval, I guess you could say, of the council for changing the name.
Thank you very much. Val, all set? You're good?
Yeah, I think most of it is written in the resolution, but I did want to bring in the idea of, it might sound a bit too long when it's Mary Coomber Miles Native Plant Garden, but even Lions Bay Native Plant Garden sounds quite long, and people usually would just refer to it as Native Plant Garden. So
thank you very much. If I could get you to stay online, let me do some procedural stuff, and there may be some questions. If I could ask Councillor Bain to read the resolution and put it forward, and then ask Councillor Abbott to second it. Councillor Bain, if you could unmute. Thank you.
Sorry, I had some background noise here. Yeah, the resolution to rename the native plant garden, we initially, when we wrote this, it was to be renamed Mary Coomber Miles Native Plant Garden. The background, Mary Coomber Miles, a longtime resident. Well, I'm just rereading what Val has just said herself, so I think you can get that.
Are you fine with the resolution as it's written?
I am. Although the Val and I have been sort of bouncing emails back and forth with your question about have we got the name right, or could we have input from council? Do they have a preference or any suggestions? Because I think we are somewhat flexible.
May I recommend that you put the motion forward, and we'll get to it in a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott, second?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. If I may, I'll go around, just again, the rotation left to my right. So it'd be me, Councillor Abbott, back to Councillor Bain, Councillor Barmare, and then if the resident have got some thoughts, a couple of things. Resolution's fine, it can be amended after what I suggested. Councillor Bain has a study group working on the cairn, and there's others that are interested in this plant garden that he seconded those who we think can provide information and direction. If necessary, it can come back to council for an amendment. I would say that I have put buried later in the budget as a place mark budget for signage, and I don't know what the pending group might recommend, whether this is wood-based, metal, or whatever. But I think that this is a pretty special part of the village in our hearts. So if you need a budget, I hope you're gonna have one. So that would be it for me. And thank you very much for coming forward. It's a great suggestion. And while it honors one person, I know that many, many people were involved. Thank you. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I don't have anything further to add. I'm supportive of it. I think it's a wonderful idea. I am aware of others that were involved. It was mentioned, as Mel mentioned, there were a few others, such as Louis Pearson, but and I wasn't intimately involved at all, but from my discussions, it does seem that Mary was the leader, the initiator, and conceptualizer, shall we say. So I believe it's appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Barmere?
Yeah, I guess I want to tell a bit of a story. We started walking from our house down to Lions Bay Ave and back up as a kind of a regular loop, a couple times a week. And we would regularly stop off in the native plant garden on the way up and sit in the round. There's a round area to sit, and we would take pictures and just enjoy it. And I just think it's a precious space, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And I absolutely support renaming it. I'm not familiar with who participates in the upkeep, but I really respect it. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmere. Councillor Bain, bring it home.
If I could put up some of the suggestions that or another one of the suggestions we made, Val and I did when we were talking about this. As far as the length of the name, of course, signage is costing by the inch pretty well. Sorry, I'm showing my heritage of being cheap. One of the thoughts that did come up for a native plant garden, we wondered if maybe the indigenous plant garden, like the Mary Miles Indigenous Garden, would be a little tighter and descriptive and somewhat appropriate. But I don't think either of us are really hanging on to any one particular title very firmly or anything. So we are flexible. But Val had asked for council input, and I think she can do better than just my input. So if you've got any other suggestions, we're still happy to hear them.
There you go. Where this is, Val, if you'd like to join in, do you have any thoughts on what's been said so far? Are you happy with naming and a rename or a modest identification pending a little more review, and working with the study group as to what the signage looks like?
I don't know if I need a study group. I'm pretty much organized as far as what would be on the sign, but if people would like a study group, then that could be a possibility.
I would be fine with Councillor Bain making a decision on that one myself. Are you good with that, Councillor Evan? Or do you want to see it first?
No, I don't need to see it.
I could definitely send a picture to council once it's sort of organized, if that would be helpful.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Good.
Are we suggesting some sort of wooden grave type sign and not normal metal?
I believe that's where Val's going, and I was thinking much bigger.
Okay, I'm not really very familiar with signs and how to do them. This bird one was the first one I did, and it was done on metal, and I actually quite like it. And I sort of was going with metal for this sign as well.
Perfect.
People would rather switch it up to have something else, then I could look at that.
What? How about if we leave it?
A comment? Don't we have a staff signage policy? I mean, we have parameters for what signs look like. It could be an official village sign that falls in line with all of our other staff signage.
Right, that's kind of what I was working on. I did work on using the standards that we've had already. I tried to. The only thing I did was change the color a bit. I made a green background instead of the brown, just to sort of fit in with the native garden concept.
Thank you. Public Works Manager, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'm fully on board with Val's use of the metal sign. I think it's most cost effective and will look really nice. Wooden signs are, we've had our problems with wooden signs. Let's just say that, and they're not cheap.
Okay. I think there's
Oh, if I could just make a suggestion in regard to your study group and the finances. Val and I have been working quite well together with the signage they've got now, and I think a study group of that size would probably be all that we really would need, if I think so, if you thought so. And further to that, the plant garden has put in for one of the Lions Bay municipal grants and was awarded it. So I think the financing has already taken its proper turn, and I think we're almost ready to go once we come up with a decision.
Very good. I'm fine with the study group of 2. Again, if there's a minor naming change, that's fine. And I think offline I'll talk to you, Councillor Bain, about what I know about the Indigenous interest in the property.
Okay.
Okay. There we go. Anybody else on this? Otherwise, I'll call a motion. There being none, I will call a motion. All those in favor of the resolution, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Carried. Thank you very much, Val.
Okay, thanks.
Got your stuff.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Next up is Richard White, and it's regarding the housing needs assessment, which is on page 9. And the recommendation is that the report 2021 Village of Lions Bay Housing Needs Assessment Report be received. I'll put forward that motion. Councillor Barmere, can you second me? Thank you, carried. And Mr. White, you have the floor. We'll go with your comment.
There's a second part to that resolution.
Oh, sorry. And that copies of the report let's amend this. That copies of the report be forwarded to the province of British Columbia via the Union of BC Municipalities and to Metro Vancouver. What do I have to do here, Carla? Repoll it?
That was a motion to amend the original.
Okay,
by adding
I'll put forward the motion to amend. Councillor Abbott, will you second that? Thank you. All those in favor of the amendment, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no. Thank you. Carried. Mr. White, you have the floor now.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. There's no real need, I think, I'm here to respond to questions if council has any. Council may recollect that we presented, the team that prepared the report presented last year. And as a result of that, it was a busy council evening, and council wanted to deal with it at a later time in the agenda. And I think it became a later date as well. And now we're back to answer any questions that council may have. The report stands as it is. There will be a few tweaks because we've presented these reports to or similar reports to Anmore and Belcarra councils. We offered to the municipalities to deal with all 3 at once because there are similarities between the 3 villages in Metro Vancouver. And we felt, and the CAOs and then eventually councils agreed some time ago that preparing them together would allow some comparisons to be drawn at times in the future. And that was what has resulted. Subsequently, Anmore and Belcarra councils have both received their reports and forwarded them to the province. And as a result, we've got feedback from UBCM, which was the sort of the gatekeeper in terms of going to getting the grant that's available. A portion of the grant has been provided to Lions Bay and the other municipalities, and we've been instructed, I guess, to prepare more background information for UBCM, and we're doing that for Anmore and Belcarra. We will do that for Lions Bay, instructed by the same people that we're dealing with at UBCM. So all of it's coming together. However, council does need to receive the document and forward it to the province. And that's the next step in the process. I'm here to answer any residual questions that might be arising from council's deliberations and review of the material. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. Let's go in reverse order for the councillors. So just a heads up, it'll be Councillor Barmere, Councillor Bain, Councillor Abbott, and myself bringing up the rear. And I know Councillor Abbott and I have lots. So we'll start with Councillor Barmere if you have any questions.
I do. I guess we're just going to take note of questions. I don't know if we need to answer them right away, but I do have a couple. So I'll just start right from the beginning here. I guess it's page 16 of 272. That's my first question, was whether we included our secondary suite numbers. And it seemed to be suggesting that we wouldn't have that information. And I thought that staff would have a reasonable idea of how many secondary suites we have. So that was one question and comment. Page.
Your worship, I don't mean to interrupt, but that seems like a question for staff. I'm not sure I'll have the information. Can we jointly respond to those questions, or?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't quite sure what, if we want to have a dialogue about this or just capture questions and address them later, because it's a report for information. I'm not clear how, exactly if we want to discuss all these questions now. So, maybe Peter can provide some guidance. I guess I just find it interesting that our secondary suite numbers are not part of our housing needs assessment. To me, it's a big gap that information isn't included.
What page was that, Norm?
It was page
16.
Well, page 16 of 72, and it says with few rentals, and again, these being in the form of rented, semi-detached, and secondary suites. These are not reported in the CMHC rental survey, which is okay. I understand that, but I would argue that staff would have that information. For this to be a true picture, we should include that. I don't know off the top of my head how many secondary suites we have, if it's 10 or 50 or how many, but it's not insignificant. And I would just want us to acknowledge that we do have rental stock in the form of secondary suites actively in the village.
Right.
So that was that comment. The next one was, and this was more me just maybe not understanding the point of this sentence, but page 20 of 272, it talks about without additional serviced lots, the projected growth will not be realized. And I guess I wanted to understand what serviced means in the context of this report, because I think there's an assumption that servicing a lot in a built-up regional district that has community sewer and community water is different from a serviced lot in Lions Bay, because we just don't have that kind of scalable infrastructure. And I think that's a real crux that we need to highlight. I'd like us to draw attention to that. It's a big cost. Yeah, go ahead.
I can answer that question,
yeah,
or at least respond to it. I might not be able to answer it fully, but that's just it's a typical approach that you deal with lots that there are many lots in Lions Bay that are unserviced. Many of them are unoccupiable because of their locations and so on. They don't have a road that accesses them, and so on. So it's a very typical response to talk about serviced versus unserviced lots. So that's the standard that planners would use across the country.
Okay.
Richard, would it also be fair to say that, what we're talking about here with this particular bit of data and the graph that's been provided, and the projection of up to 8 homes per year, is more or less a function of Metro, the way in which Metro looks at its own growth projections for the region, and then assigns proportionally via the formula that they have to project growth in the different parts of the region. And so in that sense, that methodology doesn't necessarily, or won't always, and particularly for Lions Bay, work, because it makes an assumption that the municipality that they're projecting to has the land capable or the capacity accommodate those kinds of projections, whereas Lions Bay presently does not. So when you read the next part of that paragraph, it talks about the alternative way in which increased growth can be accommodated. And if you don't have the availability of service lots at your disposal, and that's to densify by adding suites or secondary dwellings on existing properties, or allow them to become duplexes or triplexes or so forth, right? Is that more or less sort of a fair assessment of the data that we're dealing with in this particular section?
It's your worship, if I may, it's very generalized. This is a metro survey that also is required throughout BC. So there's a lot of variation between a village in outlying parts of the region compared to a village in Metro Vancouver, compared to a city in Metro Vancouver. So we just followed the instructions that the province provided us. They're interested in a review that is an apples to apples comparison. And the reason that you wind up with idiosyncrasies is because they're actually trying to standardize it from their perspective, not from the Village of Lions Bay's perspective or the Village of Zabalos or the City of Vancouver's perspective. So I think that's a very fair assessment that the CAO has provided. And I think you have to bear with it, Your Worship. It's not going to be something that we can pick your own path. The province has provided funding for this work to be done. It's primarily, it's an instruction for the municipality, but it's primarily a document that will be used by the province to figure out how they should be encouraging more housing of various types in the province.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmy, another question? Or are you good for now? We'll come back.
Yeah, no, I would just follow up and say, does that include supporting expensive infrastructure, right? That's really how growth works. It's supported by infrastructure, and it's something we don't have. I have a few more comments. On page 23 of 272,
would you be able to refer to the report rather than whatever you're referring to? Because I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a little hard. It's a little hard for me. I can do that. So what I have now in front of me is the Housing Needs Reports summary form, and it would be in the population box, the fourth line down, or pardon me, the third line down, number of households for 495 in 2016 to 560 in 2021. So I was wondering if that included secondary suites or where that number came from, that 560 number.
Your Worship, that number is generated by Metro, and it includes all types of housing from high-rise apartments to secondary suites, whether they be legal or not. And it's, once again, it's a piece of data that is standardized across Metro. That particular approach is Metro-based rather than provincially generated.
So it's not a number that's specific to Lions Bay, that 560 households? Because we know that's not correct.
No, well, the type of household and the number, the numbers, so by the way, the number is a projection, I believe.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right? Not what's there now, right? And households is it's a dwelling unit is another way of describing a household.
Okay.
So a house with a secondary suite, whether it be legal or not, would be viewed by the data, the demographers as two households. It might be one house, but two households. Sorry, am I not making myself clear?
I guess I thought that that's a statement of how many households Lions Bay has in the year 2021, which we're saying is 560. But we know that's not the case. So unless I'm misunderstanding that,
Your Worship, the data that we're working on, when we prepared this work, it was based on 2016 information.
Could I just maybe help a little? So I too am frustrated by that, and by the fact that we're using these projections. And I think it's unfortunately supported. I think it's a false premise that's created a false conclusion. But we do now have the 2021 data. And the 495 number in 2016 was the number of private dwellings occupied by usual residents. That's what 495 is. So it's obviously it's your primary residence type thing. And in 2021, the number is 506, not 560. So this information came out last week or the week before. And I honestly, Richard, I understand that you are given parameters to work with. This is not critiquing your work by any way, because you didn't come up with the numbers, the projections, but I find it a struggle that we have in the sport that then takes 560 and projects it out for the next few years and comes up with those numbers that are just ludicrous in our situation. They just can't be achieved. And my real concern is, by submitting this report and not making statements to that effect, are we actually committing ourselves in some way to having to achieve this? And I'm ready to receive this report. I think we need to, and I've got lots of other examples of that as I could go through. I'll just jump in there, Norm, sorry to interrupt, because you were talking about that one. But that's where that number comes from. It's 495 was 2016, the number of private dwellings occupied by usual residents. And in 2021, it's 506.
Okay.
So the rest of all those tables and projections just don't mean anything.
I just had a few more comments here. I'll try and be quick. The other one was on 3.1, table 17. There's a table, it lists number and percentage of dwelling units by structure type at Lions Bay. And again, I'm just curious if this captures our secondary suites or not. So again, just a question if that's information.
What page of the agenda, Norm?
44 of 272.
So, Your Worship, if I may, what these data include are the Stats Canada material that is provided through this the census. So that is meant to be an accurate reflection of the 2016 data that residents and homeowners of Lions Bay submitted as part of their response to the federal government's census.
Okay. I think I just have two more, sorry. On page 45 of 272 under rental housing, makes some comment about confidentiality, which I respect, but I would have thought that we'd have some generic data on rentals in the village. That would capture, again, secondary suites, which is sounding like we're just not going to look at in this report.
So if we're looking at page 19 of the report, I think this is the one due to the small population size of the village.
Yeah.
So Stats Canada suppresses data that is where and it's typically less than 10 respondents that say yes to a question like that. They just feel uncomfortable that other people might be able to identify the respondents by the small sample size. If there's one respondent, it might be very easy to tell what their concern was or what their issue was in response. So it's suppressed data because of the small sample size. And one of the things that indicates to me is that there's not a lot of this type of housing in the municipality.
Yeah, I think we have information on that. And then there's only one more comment I have, and that was with respect to table 20, page 20 of the report, and in the case of the agenda package 46 of 272. And that, I mean, the subsidized housing question, I don't know if this is totally fair, but we've dropped a utility payment requirement for certain instances. So I don't know if that's something we can highlight. I guess it just generally speaks to the scale of the tools used for the report in respect of the scale of our village, which is 500 homes. So the devil's in the details for us, and the percentages matter. So that's my only comment, is I think that we have to be careful how we present this. I appreciate your time, Richard.
No, and I thank you for the the comments and concerns. I'm here to try and answer them. And non-market housing is a bit tricky. It typically involves a subsidy in terms of the housing unit, but people also receive subsidies, income subsidies. So shelter aid for elderly renters might be quite, that might be happening in the municipality and so on. So it's also a tricky thing where people might get income subsidies of various types to help them stay in their house. Whereas this is a discussion about units that are non-market housing, which means that BC Housing or some other agency produces, a 10 or 12 unit development. Very, very typical throughout the province in various places, not in Lions Bay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Councillor Bain?
No further questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, so I've got a few. Sorry, Richard, but they are largely along the same lines. So I'll try and go through it fairly quickly. I understand that you're working with information or data that you're given, and it's not your data. And these projections are in the first part of the report, Metro's projections, and then later from StatsCan. But I think, I don't know, maybe can we put footnotes at the bottom of these pages and sort of qualify that these aren't these numbers, or can we do something, or we need to rewrite the conclusion somehow that says, some of these numbers don't make sense. That's where my mind is, but I'll just put that out there for now, and then I'll go to some of the examples.
Richard, do you have a response to that?
No, I don't think so, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just get a clarification, Richard?
Yeah, sure.
You don't think so that you have a response, or you don't think so that we could put footnotes, or alternatively some kind of an appendix with additional information from the village, such as registered secondary suites, the number of single-family dwellings on our assessment roll, the number of undeveloped lots on our assessment roll, things like that?
Sure. Sorry, I didn't understand the question. I appreciate the clarification. You can provide additional information to the province if you feel it's in order, or just to support the report as it's written. The province doesn't require that. But I think you're welcome to provide them additional information. The other 200 odd municipalities and the 30 or odd regional districts that have produced reports haven't done that. But that's certainly something that the village could do. And I don't think it would be, it won't invalidate the report. I think it just clarifies your perspectives or your more detailed information that many other municipalities may not have.
Thank you very much, Richard. Councillor Abbott, Councillor Barmere, would you be happy if staff provided, based on the conversation, presuming we submit this, and we could send an addendum off to the province with basically footnotes?
Yeah, we could prepare that before we send it out to them, right?
Yeah, we'd have to do that.
Yeah, but we still got some time, it's end of April.
Not much. No, we had to get an extension from UBCM to what right. Date? What did we get?
I think a follow-up addendum.
Sorry, I didn't check, but it's
the
council meeting that it can be approved at in order to meet the deadline for the grant.
So the submission date's the end of April, but the grant times out earlier.
Right. I'll have to check. I can't remember. Sorry.
We'll have to check on what the extension was to.
If I may, for Councillor Abbott and Councillor Barmere, I appreciate the idea of it being pretty. I appreciate staff wanting to hustle it out the door, and it's due in April.
No, it's due sooner than April, actually.
So the report says it's due end of April, but the grant expires before that.
Yeah.
Okay, so catch-22. So with that piece of information, I'm sure an addendum will give us the data that we're looking for, which is the equivalent of footnotes. So I'm going to presume that Councillor Barmere and Councillor Abbott would be fine with that, lacking any other way to get it in there.
And you said March 21st?
I think it was March 31st, I think, is the, so it has to be approved.
So it couldn't come back to one more meeting?
Yes, I said it has to be one more meeting.
Okay,
So
so we have
March
one.
15th.
So we have one more.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abbott, you're on a roll.
Well, just I'll not to be too pedantic, but there's a typo on page 3 towards the bottom. It says Manly, and it should say mainly. I'm using the report page numbers because I'm using my previous version from the first time we got it. It says mainly. I think it's meant to say mainly.
What page was that of the report?
Page 3.
3?
Yeah.
Perhaps, I mean, we'll be able to edit those kind of changes. Perhaps the CAO could, I'm looking at page 3, it's an index, so it would be handy if you could, circle that on whatever document you're looking at that says page 3 and send it to us. That would be helpful. Otherwise, it'll be hard to find Manly from mainly.
I'm using the page number at the bottom of the report.
Bottom right-hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the more than one page 3. Sorry, let's just do this again.
Got an index.
That's odd. There's page 1, page 2, page 3. No, you haven't got the index in this report. Okay.
Your worship, I'm sure we can work this out later.
We'll find it later. Yeah, it's not told everyone else.
Councillor Abbott, let's get to the main points here.
Okay, now I'm going to have to get everyone on the same page. So actually, this I suggest you've actually corrected this in a way in your report already. When Metro used this increase of 130 people from 2016 to 2026, which is not supported by StatsCan. They say 20, and then they calculate that out to be 82 households, which works out to 1.6 per household. But 2 pages earlier in the report, we point out that Lions Bay's households are 2.7 and Metro's are 2.5. I just don't, I battle to understand why, Metro's own numbers wouldn't even correlate. Why wouldn't we just use, I guess that's once again, Metro gave you that number and tell you to use it.
We're a prisoner of the statistics we have available, I think would be the fair way to talk about it. That might be a Metro average rather than a typical household size in the village of Lions Bay or elsewhere. Yeah, but once again, I don't have. You're talking about something that I don't have on my screen, so I can't give you an accurate description. But that's a very likely scenario in the urban area of the region. Household sizes are far smaller than in the suburban areas or the rural areas in the case of Lions Bay.
Could you see what page it is on the other report without the indexes, so we all kind of just add 3 or something to it? Not that far in.
So sorry, what do you?
Well, I'm trying to get, so this is page 3 of this report, which past the index, it's the 3rd page in. It's labeled as page 3 on mine. What is it labeled on yours?
So on here, it is page 15 of 272. So it's
not going to help Richard either.
Page 3 of the report.
Page 3 of Richard's report.
Page 3 of the report.
You said it's page 7 on yours or something.
Page 7? Okay, I got page 7.
Page 7, it's page 3 on mine.
Page 3. You're looking at this page, right?
Yeah.
Page 3.
Maybe there's a title. Could you refer to a title? There's lots of titles in there.
Introduction.
Share my screen.
Overview of local demographic and market context. There's a table comparing household and dwelling size.
So could we all refer to the table of contents? That would help. Then there's various, that's on page 2 of the Housing Needs Report dated July 2021. And if you could look at the title that aligns with the comment you want me to evaluate, I can then refer to the pages. And it goes up to page 24. So page starts at page 5, introduction. Am I making sense to you?
No, because what we're looking at, Richard, is the Housing Needs Assessment Report, which is only a 10-page report that was that came to one of the meetings in 2021, November 2021.
Okay. I had all this stuff open on my
the index is different. The table of contents is different from what it is in the agenda for this meeting, I think. No,
it's not. It's exactly the same report.
It's the same.
It's exactly the same report.
Yeah.
I did check it.
So,
yeah.
What suggested sharing
under
the screen.
overview, page 2, then if you continue following in that section under overview of the local demographic and market context, you go over the page onto page 3. It talks about the comparing household and dwelling size, and middle of the page right below the graph talks about there being clearly a mismatch in the characteristics of the population, the existing dominant housing form and size. 57% of households have 2 or fewer persons, and only 18% of houses have less than 3 bedrooms. Many empty nesters remain in large homes, suggesting some degree of overhousing.
Yes.
That's what you're talking
That's
about.
exactly what I'm.
Yeah.
You on the right page now?
So
yeah,
okay,
I know I can almost remember that verbatim, but I think that might be the. I'm not looking for it now, because I think it might be part of the presentation we made. So could you just repeat that?
Okay,
could you repeat? No, so could you just repeat the comment, Peter? Because if that's the thing you want me to talk about, just repeat it. Thanks. I'll quit looking for stuff. Okay.
Okay. Okay. On that, the next paragraph down, it says the average household size in Lions Bay was 2.7. Metro household size is 2.5. BC 2.4. We go down 2 more pages, and they say that you're going to grow by 130 people, but we should use a household size of 1.6, and therefore it grows to 82 households. But in their same stats, 2 pages earlier, they say the average is somewhere between 2.4 and 2.7. So how do they then divide 130 by 1.6 and tell us we need 82 households? I
think the context here is that, and it says right here on page 3, while there are many small households, these are mainly 2-person, and a sizable number of 4 or more families pull up the overall average. So you can still have 57% of the dwellings being only a couple of people and in big houses. Mm-hmm. And then you've got a lot of people in the other houses, and the other 43% that's pulling up the average to 2.7 per household, which is more than what Metro's average is, and more than BC's average. So but you still have the majority of houses which you have hardly anybody in them, so you're overhoused.
I get that. So then when we go to the projections on page 7, just 3 pages later, they say their projection increase of 130 people from 2016 to 26. And they expect they expect us to create 82 homes to house those people, which imply, and in the report says, this implies an average of 1.6, which is out of line with previously. I think this is where, and I understand someone saying you have to build 82 smaller houses, but we know that's unlikely to happen in Lions Bay, because every time someone builds a house, it's more likely to be a larger house because of the property values. So these are the kind of footnotes that I think we need to make.
It's the problem of small numbers, right? When you're talking about Metro, Lions Bay disappears as a statistical thing. But when you look at, and this is what the province required Metro and the Lions Bay to do, is to look at it, and the context for Lions Bay is Metro Vancouver. That's one of the reasons we suggested that the municipality of Lions Bay team up with Anmore and Belcarra, because there's more comparables there. If you were comparing yourself to West Vancouver, which is an older community, smaller households as well, it's still quite a different place. So I think that's, if it's frustrating for you, I don't think that you should worry about it. It's just the methodology that everybody was obliged to use. Footnotes might help, but I don't think it's significantly, I think it may not be a good use of your staff's time or council's time to spend more time on this. The proof will be in the next OCP that you produce, which will be based very much on your context, not on provincial norms or metro averages and so on. And I think the 1.8 that is there, I still haven't found it, by the way, but I'm pretty sure the 1.8, it reflects a metro standard household size rather than a Lions-based standard household size. I think the CEO made a very good point, though, is that there's quite a range between young families that might seek Lions Bay because of, its various attractions. And that's a great place for a large family to locate. But the predominant household size, I think, in Lions Bay is smaller because it's a relatively mature community, and a lot of people have more house than they need, but it's the house they've lived in for 30 years, so they're happy to stay.
Okay, I think we'll move on from that point. If we just go down to the Appendix A housing needs summary, which Norm referred to earlier. On the bottom of the first page of that, it's got medium household incomes. I think you've swapped the number for renters versus owners. It says renters' medium income is 130,839, and household owners is 73. I would suspect those numbers are swapped over.
I doubt that's the case. What happens, and I've dealt with this over 40 years of my career, is that when you have a mature population, your income tends to drop. So 75-year-old person's house income is basically based on pensions and so on, whereas a family that moves into the community quite often, even as renters, has a very big income because they are both working parents and so on. We can check into that, but I think, for instance, I dealt in the city of North Vancouver over the years with a community or a subdivision, an area within the city of North Vancouver, Cedar Village, some of you might know, but they had the highest average household incomes of any place, including Tempe Heights and other more prestigious places, because it was a young community that lived in that place. A lot of townhouses, a lot of renters.
Okay, well, it seems a little odd because the regional district numbers go the other way. Owner households are larger.
Younger community, yeah.
Yeah, and I would be surprised if the average household income of household owners in Lions Bay is 73,000. That's not, it flies in the face of some of the other statistics, stats can and so on. The numbers are definitely different, maybe way different than in 2016. So maybe we should just have a look at that.
We'll definitely check it.
And then my last question, now I've moved on to the next section, which is the draft housing needs report. Start with the introduction. And these numbers, page numbers start again over, so that the table of contents was on page 4. So on page 6 of this report, now this is what's come from this StatsCan numbers, not Metro's predictions. That predicts our increase to be 20 people projects an increase of 20 people from 1,440 in 2021 to 1,460 in 2026, which is dramatically different to what we just saw earlier in the report. And we actually know the number in 2021 because the StatsCan numbers are out now, and it's actually 1,390. So when I go further down this report, and if I jump down a few pages to where it uses the projections, this would be the graphs under 2.2 household, number of households. It starts a projection in 2021 of 560, which, as I said, it got before as a projection. And we now know the number is actually 506, we suspect, from the latest numbers we got from StatsCan that came out a week or so ago. So this is where I really get concerned with when we put this report in, because it seems as if we could well, at some level of government, could well be committing ourselves to achieve these extremely unlikely numbers of having 595 households in 5 years' time, which is 89 households more than we've got right now. The land doesn't exist. We're never going to achieve that. So it can never happen. So I just feel we need to put some sort of qualification on this document. If it really is just ticking a box and wasting taxpayers' money, in my opinion, in this case, that we had to do it, we had to do it. We should put some sort of qualification that, along the lines of the other stuff we've said in our response to 2050, and other documents that we're dealing with recently or in the near future, that these numbers aren't achievable in Lions Bay. You just have to put a qualifier in. That's what I'd like to see before it goes out.
Just to be clear, a household isn't a house. A household is the number of separate households that live within a house or within an apartment building, you name it. So it would be quite easily attainable in Lions Bay if you allowed coach houses more regularly, or if people came in and you allowed secondary suites and people wanted to be housed within a secondary suite in Lions Bay. So the difference between 500 and 595, if it's 100, is not insurmountable. It's maybe unlikely. And by the way, this figure 4, which I think I'm following now finally, the numbers that you're referencing, but that is anticipated households in 2021. So it was a guess based on the data that was available in 2016. And households, I think another councillor questioned whether households and houses were sort of the, something that was not easy. There may be a lack of data within Lions Bay about the number of households because there are more secondary suites than have been accounted for before. But Stats Canada and Metro Vancouver, based on Stats Canada, look at the number of households, not the number of houses.
So actually, if you take from our regional context statement, the data that we pulled from our assessment roll, we show 528 single family homes plus 58 registered secondary suites. So together, the household count of whatever that adds up to, 586. So more than what they say our baseline is at 2021. So we're already ahead of the game here. I think we've got to be careful about how we're looking at these words.
When you look at two paragraphs that follow each other, and it says in 2016 the number of households were 495, right? And then it jumps to in 2021 it's at 560. In the same report, slightly lower down, and then it says in 2026 it's going to be 595. So those are the numbers that are in this report, Peter, which are different to that.
Yeah, but if we're already at 586, to get to 595 in 5 years isn't going to be hard to do.
But then we shouldn't say we're only at 510.
So Your Worship, this is data that has been reported by residents of the community. So it may be at odds with the data that's available in the municipal hall. But yeah. I think that's, I think that's a possible explanation of some of the concerns that are being raised.
Very much. Councillor Abbott, or you?
Can we just address that with an addendum?
I think so.
Yeah.
But I could show you a few more, Peter, but I think, yeah, you can address that with an addendum.
Okay. Just take a rest, Councillor Abbott, for a second. Councillor Barmier, you had your hand up.
Sorry, there was. Sorry, there was one other thing. This is once again, sorry, just a typo. Peter, on that same page 10 at the bottom, it says Lions Bay households in 20 was 2.7, which was lower than the average of Metro of 2.5. Lower should be higher.
Yes, it should.
Sorry, Noel.
No, I just, I'm glad we've come full circle and recognize that the addendum clarifying or correcting the number of households is quite key here, because we have put this in our OSIP for a long time for exactly this reason, right? We have been trying to encourage densification in the form of cottages and secondary suites, and it's actually been a success. So it's worth highlighting that and recognizing Lions Bay's effort in that regard, so that we're not looked at as this community that doesn't provide for additional housing options. We do that, and we should make sure that the province knows that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmer. Councillors, last second before I round this up.
Can we make a friendly amendment?
If it's to do with an addendum, I think we're going to do that anyhow.
Okay.
So I thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. So we'll stop the questions on this one. So we have the motions on the floor, and we've had the discussion with our staff and with Richard. So I understand from staff there is time bind to get this in. Correct me if I'm right on this one, because we're saying we're going to receive it and send it. So that's fine, but we will also send an addendum, and if that could come before council, this is not part of the motion. If that addendum could come before council at the next meeting, CAO, would that be fine? And then it could be subsequently sent to the province?
Yeah.
Yes. All clear on that, councillors? So if that is the case, then I will call the motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much, CEO DeJohn, for taking the notes and coming back with an addendum that we can see and then send up. Richard, thank you very much. We'll try and do better our numbering next time. And thank you very much for your patience.
So we passed the resolution as written?
Yes.
That staff prepare an addendum to attach to the report for submission.
So as amended. The resolution we voted on did not have anything about an addendum in it.
That was going to happen anyhow. Let's formalize it.
So that's why I voted no.
Okay, let's just make a separate resolution. So I'll put forward the motion relative to the just approved motion. It's expanded to include that staff will provide an addendum to the data to go concurrently. Councillor Abbott, does that sit with you?
Yeah, which will come back to the next meeting.
Second? Yes, thank you. I'll call a motion. All those in favor, yes. Opposed, no. Thank you, passed. Yeah. Again, thank you, Richard. Bye-bye and good night. All right, councillors. Thank you very much for everybody's diligence. Neat document. Okay. Review of the minutes from the last meeting, which is February 15th. And the motion is that the regular council meeting minutes of February 15th be approved as circulated. I'll put that forward. Councillor Barmier, hands up. Thank you. Any discussion, any changes, amendments, deletions?
I have one.
Councillor Abbott, make your change.
Page 57. Under business arising, page 57. The statement's a little bit misleading. It's not what I said. Mainly that I did not attend this meeting as an intervener. There's an intention that when we do go to Utilities Commission, when BC Hydro does go to the Utilities Commission with their revised structure rate, sometime in April, Council had authorised me to act as an intervener at that time. So I did, I'll just read what I think was the correction. And I did send it to Carla earlier. So if she can adjust the minutes later. So I think the statement should read, Councillor Abbott provided an update on the meeting he attended with respect to BC Utilities Commission hearings on BC Hydro's price application. BC Hydro are asking for an interim rate adjustment with a broader rate application in April. Interestingly, BC Hydro seem to be accepting that the two-tiered structure rate is punitive and the rate adjustment request will be applied by increasing the basic in step 1 rate, but the step 2 pricing rate will remain unchanged. However, they noted that overall bills will be reduced marginally due to a reduction in deferral account rates.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. And Municipal Coordinator, I know we're not answered, but I think it's pretty detailed and it's a detailed topic. We can have the full statement in the next minutes. That'd be great. Any other amendments, changes, deletions, councillors? There being none, call a motion. Please accept the agenda as amended by confirming yes, opposed no.
Yes.
Carried, thank you. Business arising, I have none. We'll quickly go around. Councillor Bain, Barmayor, Abbott, please raise your hand or no. Councillor Abbott, take us.
Yeah, I had one on page 60.
What is it?
The statement on page 60 that I would be writing something on the rodenticides. Councillor Abbott noted he would provide a piece for the village update on the pest control bylaw amendment. There's been a subsequent slight change of plan, and workshop manager has done that when consulted with the bird-friendly group.
I recall you offering to do that. You didn't do it. I don't think so.
Well, I think I did. I might have.
Okay.
But anyway, Nye's now done it, and he's dealing with the bird-friendly group.
Public Works Manager, it's yours when it comes out. Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. That concludes that. Item number 9, unfinished business. I'll be quick. Rail crossings. I know there's nothing happening there, but we're going to be talking about it later. BCSPCA, I presume nothing, Works Manager? Nope. Okay, thank you. And Marcia's response, CFO, so we'll see that payroll inquiry next meeting. Yes, thank you. So everything will stay the same. Report, staff, parking plan, CAO. Who does have a parking plan?
I just need to grab a glass of water.
Yep. Okay, we'll just get through the procedural stuff. Councillor Abbott, just a second. Keep going. The motion is the council direct staff to allocate funds towards year-round bylaw enforcement, part-time in the winter, in the 2022 budget and the 2022-2026 5-year financial plan. I'll put that forward. Councillor Barmayor, can you second, please? Thank you. CAO, why don't you do this? You're giving us what we asked for.
Okay, so this fairly thick report is due in part because attached to it is the one that you got in December with sort of the summary and review of what had taken place in 2021. So with respect to the upcoming season, what we're looking at is there'll be some tweaking in terms of signage, as there always is. And some of that will be as a result of suggestions from the bylaw officers' end of year report. And One of the ideas included consolidating some of the signage in the Kelvin Grove Beach parking lot because there's a fair bit of it, and making it a bit bigger, and improving signage visibility in various areas throughout the village. So moving on to online ticketing system, we'll continue with that. The bylaw officers found it to be helpful and efficient in terms of their ability to write tickets, reduce human error, and professionalize some of the ticket writing that we're doing, and provides for better online integration with payments and so forth. Meters. So the meters were implemented last year starting April 1st, and we're planning to do the same again this year. Paid on-street parking took a little while to implement, but it was on stream by about mid-June. We received feedback that, lots of cell phone challenges in terms of reception in many areas. We had to cancel the paid on-street parking for Crystal Falls Road. Because of that, it was simply not possible to get a reliable cell phone signal at all in that area. One of the things that we found people doing a little bit last year was because when they couldn't get a signal on their phone, some of them purchased a ticket at the meter when they walked past the meter at the Sunset Trailhead. And so one of the things that we're going to do this year is we're going to put a meter at the intersection of Bayview and Mountain Road, or Mountain Drive. And that will assist people who were, will have signage there so that they realize that if they couldn't get a signal to pay for on-street parking down, lower down on Bayview Road, for instance, that they can pay for it there. Sometimes people have had trouble on Mountain Drive getting a signal and paying for on-street parking. So that will enable them to address that, and hopefully we'll have more efficient use of our program and less disputes as a result. Other improvements, we're still looking at a few things, and we'll continue to do so to find ways to try and streamline things and reduce the impacts of the dispute process that process has on staff time and dealing with some irate people sometimes. As well, we've got portable toilets back. We had to switch providers, so we'll see how that goes. We'll be adding as the season goes on. And resident parking passes, everybody's getting 2 new ones with their utility bills in the mail. They should be getting them any day if they haven't already. It'll be valid for 2 years instead of 3. We were finding that over 3 years, the stickiness was tending to lose functionality. In terms of parking fees, these are the fees that are set for the meters and for the on-street parking. I've provided a table that outlines what the history of those fees has been from the time they were introduced in 2017. And the recommendation is to keep those fees at the same rate as they were last year, which is $4 an hour at the Lions Bay Beach parking lot, $3 an hour at Kelvin Grove Beach parking lot, $3 an hour at Sunset, and $2 an hour for on-street parking. Each of those has an 8-hour maximum, so that if you're more than 8 hours, you don't get charged for the additional time. So if you're up hiking and can't make it back in time, your cutoff is at 8 hours. So the meter at the intersection of Bayview and Mountain will have a rate of $2 to reflect it's intended for on-street parking. Over the page is a table that shows parking meter revenue, and it's a little bit misleading because the expenses that are noted there are simply the meter expenses, the cost of renting those, and don't include additional unqualified expenses that are associated with the revenues that are earned, such as staff time required from administrative staff and public works, as well as bylaw officer time, wages, equipment, hardware, software, all that kind of stuff as well. In terms of, there's a breakout there of how much of the on-street pay parking is contributing to the overall total for 2021. Parking fine revenue is shown in the next paragraph. And it's noted that the amounts tripled in 2020 and what the impacts of that were. Disputes went way up and compliance was not necessarily any greater. So we talked about that before. That's a reiteration of the data that bears that out. In terms of increasing in fines, as I noted, didn't really increase compliance. Ideally, we think that the base ticket amount ought to be reduced to something in the neighborhood of $150 instead of $195. But if council isn't keen to act on that, then we would like to proceed with reducing the late payment amount. So what we've got is the base payment amount for the typical fine, parking fine of $195. If you pay it right away within 14 days, you can pay it off at $100. So that was to encourage compliance and get it over and done with quickly. If you go beyond 28 days, currently the fine goes up to $240. Our experience was that we didn't find that the increased amount for late payment was resulting in any late payments. It really only just served to agitate people further, and we think it would be a lot simpler, get away from the agitation, the additional aggravation, but as well it would assist in terms of processing payments and tracking payments. It gets a little complicated when they start changing again. So it would be of assistance and streamline finance department's time to keep the fine at $195, so it doesn't go up past 28 days. It just, the amount is $195, or if they pay within 14 days, $100. So you've got in your package bylaw 616, which would be an amendment to give effect to lopping off the late payment charge for your consideration. Bylaw enforcement. So the summary from last year is there for your review. As well, we've got the table below is the most recent up-to-date data from the trail counters at the Sunset Trailhead and the Ocean View Trailhead. And so what it shows is that we've got, between August and February, about 15,000 people passing through Sunset Trailhead, of which about 9,000 or 9,272 to be accurate, going off on the Tunnel Bluffs branch, and the remainder of about 6,000 proceeding up the Lions Trail. Versus on the Ocean View Trailhead side, about 5,000 people. There are additional graphs which provide information with respect to the timing of people passing through, and you can see that at Sunset, the numbers appear to bear out that hikers are heading out early, hitting the trailhead earlier than at Ocean View. The suspicion is that perhaps there's more residential users at the Ocean View trailhead. So that's just theoretical postulating. So in terms of bylaw coverage, we're planning similar coverage from April through October as what we had last year. Basically, we had 2 officers working 35 hours a week, and then a third providing additional coverage for the first 2 officers, and as well as on busy weekends or holiday weekends. As well, we had that person doing some bylaw enforcement with respect to garbage putouts on Thursday evenings. And so we plan to do the same sort of thing this year. Beyond October, there is, as you see in the recommendation at the beginning of the report, a provision for having a part-time bylaw officer through the winter months. I think there will be times when the hours needed will be very few. At other times, as things pick up and as the weather improves, such as what we've experienced this February, there'll be more to do. I guess one of the questions that would pertain is whether we also therefore keep the meters in year round. And that would seem to make sense if we're going to have bylaw enforcement. Without getting into, finance staff is still working on crunching the numbers, but the preliminary analysis suggests that there's a business case to having a part-time bylaw officer through the winter months, and that'll be supported through those revenues, assuming that we keep meters in. So other considerations are, we've attached the towing policy. There's been some discussion and questions lately about when is towing appropriate, who can do it, what does it involve? And so that's attached for your reference. There is a process and it needs to be followed. And so it's there for a reason. Staff resources, we're looking at how we can better accommodate the influx of that we face every year with parking and the drain on resources. So we're still looking at ways that we can manage that better, both through electronic means as well as additional labor resources. But that's about it for now. In terms of the actual parking areas, they're the same, intended to be the same as last year.
Thank you very much, CEO DeJong. To get some of the direction work out of the way, I will poll the councillors on the 3 questions that you've embedded within your request. And again, I'll just go left to right, then right to left. So the first question, Councillor Abbott, are you in favor of keeping the meters in year round?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Barmeyer, year round?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Councillor Bain?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, I think we're clear on that one. Next one, going reverse. Councillor Bain, the base fine is $195. Are you fine with that, or have you desired to change it to $150?
I'm fine with 195. But if the consensus is 150, that's fine.
Okay.
We can compromise on that.
Thank you for that middle of the road answer, I think, if I got that right. So Councillor Barmeyer? 195 is where we believe we're keeping it.
I'm fine with keeping it. I understand the late penalty adjustment. That makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And that'll be the third question, Councillor Abbott.
I'm fine with keeping 195. I think we decided in a previous meeting.
Yeah, okay, 195 carries. So there's your staff's answer on that one, which then is the late payment, which is the recommendation of 195. Councillor Abbott, you first.
Every other fine we have has an early payment and a late payment. So why? I just don't understand. I struggle to understand what sort of motivation that would drive on people if late payment's the same as early as the normal fine. It's not going to motivate them to pay on time, that's for sure, and then can pay any time they like.
I think that's the point. It doesn't motivate them. Once it gets to 195, it's going all the way. It's going to collections, and it causes us a lot of extra work because then we have to change everything, push the fee up, record that extra fee, and then send out letters again saying that now you owe this much. It already inflames people who are already really upset. So we think it would help with just the pushback. And by then, when it gets to 240, it's already gone to collection. So even if they collect it, we only get 2/3 of it. So it's purely administrative. We're finding that it isn't a motivator. Once it gets to the 28 days, and if they haven't paid it, saying, okay, it definitely motivates them to pay it early because it's $100. But when they don't pay it and they've missed that, there doesn't seem to be any motivation for them to pay it. And it's just extra administration work for us. So that was purely why.
Okay, Councillor Evans, you got your answer. Your poll is 195 sorry. It's the change to 195.
What do we used to have 240, right? And now we changed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a reduction.
So essentially we're removing the late penalty.
Okay. I'll come back to Councillor. You're still thinking about it. Councillor Barmayer?
Yeah, I guess I've been looking at these numbers. I mean, they're not complicated numbers. There's 4 of them, 4 years worth. And I see there's an interesting trend between canceled and disputed, where I guess maybe the ticketing style in 2018 were those handwritten tickets. And then we changed to electronic ticketing over the years since 2018. Is that right?
We only changed to electronically last year.
Okay, we changed to electronically. Yeah, just there's an odd, I guess I'm just wondering,
it's hard to make a comparison to 2019.
Yeah, I see that.
We were in a pandemic and we didn't have the kind of staycations that we're seeing now and the kind of enforcement that we're seeing now.
We only had weekend enforcement then.
Yeah, I guess I just see that the disputes have gone up significantly. So, you know, I guess to your point, it makes sense that if we can avoid the disputes, but is that actually going to happen? Is that actually going to make a difference if we lower the late payment piece? I'm on the fence. To your point, Pam, I don't think it makes a difference at all, because if it's going to collections anyways, and we only get a portion of it, I don't see that this is incentivizing people to pay. It's in fact probably enraging them. So I'm okay with lowering the late penalty fee.
Thank you very much.
Is there a way you can tell people we have a late payment, but see you talking to me, we can waive that, we can give you the standard payment if you still comply, but don't actually remove the late payment. Just
well, that Councillor Abbott, it's kind of
trying to use it for some sort of leverage.
The data the CFO just gave us.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's some sort of leverage.
We're kind of doing a max out thing here.
Wait, carry on. Who else?
Sorry.
Councillor Bain hasn't.
We're still voting. I think we're still going around the table voting.
Okay, well, we'll come back to this one if that's fine with you. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it again, and I'm looking at page 88 of 272 and comparing it with page 230 of 272. And yeah, sorry, when I was voting, the phone was ringing in my ear, so I was a little distracted. You've got here on page 88 an example. We've provided an example of terms that the fine should be, and in dark print, it's got penalty $100, and early discount of 70, and late penalty 120. And then it's got instead, and then in red ink, it's got penalty 195, early discount of 100, late penalty 240. But if I go over to page 230, I see 229. I see a $195 ticket, has a $100 early fee or early payment, and then 195 for the late one. So what's page 88 all about then?
So if I could speak to that, page 88 is just the bylaw officer's report last year. That was their suggestion. So that's what they put in their report that they provided to administrative staff.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. So the
That
one
was their thoughts on the matter.
Okay, so the one we're really discussing is what's going to show up on page 229 and 230. You're wanting to lower the 195 fee parking ticket to what?
No, the 195 parking ticket, the base rate stays at 195.
Yeah.
And you get it's $100 if you pay it right away. But if you don't, if it goes past 28 days, instead of it going up to 240, it would just stay at 195. And the reason for that is there's no incentive. It's not, 240 is not producing any more compliance. It's just creating administrative work for finance staff, as well as administrative staff got to send out another letter with a new amount. And so it's a bunch more work. It oftentimes will aggravate the person who's disputing. And so there's no benefit in going up to 240. So what you're looking at is the proposed amendment for bylaw 616 to drop off that 240 late payment and just keep everything at 195, other than you still get $100 if you do payment right away.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm kind of wondering if it's a late payment and it's going to go to collection, wouldn't it be an idea to boost it up to the 240 so that we get 50% of the 240 as opposed to 50% of the 195? Does that make sense?
But it's an administrative issue.
Yeah, pain in the neck, granted, but so are the illegal parkers. You know, I keep going back in my mind, and I look at all the correspondence we've gotten over the years about people, particularly on Mountain and Sunset, where people park indiscriminately. And if they're going to totally ignore our laws and signs and bylaws and everything, I think, why do we want to cut them a break? I just think if we really tick them off enough so they never come back, if they're not going to abide by our bylaws, what's the loss? Other than, unfortunately, the staff time, I know.
Sorry, Councillor Rain, it's not just unfortunately the staff time, it's the abuse we have to hear on a daily basis in the summer when people receive the collection letters and seeing that it's 240. Yes, they had a lot of time to be able to pay it, but a lot of people just can't, and they won't when they see the amount. And we're trying to reduce the number of disputes and the abuse that come in towards staff. So on top of the administration that happens by having to do a late penalty, we're also trying to reduce the anger that people feel when they see something that's almost $300.
And we're not giving them a break. At $195, it's still the most expensive ticket in the Lower Mainland. So I don't think it's fair to say they're getting a break at $195.
It's very difficult to justify the amount when there's no policy with a rationale stating the actual amount. There's a policy stating that there is graduated fines, but there's absolutely nothing to justify the $240.
Can I explore my thought just a little further?
Just a second here, Councillor Abbott. Okay, so this is the final issue on giving guidance here. So Councillor Abbott, you have the floor, and then this is not a voting scenario, this is guidance for staff. But if we're going to be split, it will be a vote at the next council meeting.
Okay, so here's my thought, and maybe I'll ask you. So currently, It gets to 28 days, you send them a letter, you tell them it's $240 and it's gone to collections. Can you reword that letter that says, you've hit the 28-day mark, we have a penalty of $240 for late payment. If you pay within the next 48, well, I don't know, 2 weeks, whatever number you want to pick, you can still pay a lower fee. Failing that, if it goes past that time, it will be going to collection.
That's exactly.
So there's one more opportunity.
We already sent out. We already sent out a letter that says, we haven't received your payment. It's $195. If you don't receive it in 2 weeks, it goes to $240 and it goes to collections. And it's, we can't force the issue after that point, but it's when they hit the $240 and they might not have been able to pay the $195 because that's also very costly. And, throughout the summer, we get all kinds of, it's not simply that they just didn't want to pay it. There's people who send their bank statements showing that they don't have the money to pay it. There's all kinds of situations. So it's difficult to just blanket it to one solution.
Okay, so here's my thought process. So you have a mechanism to give them 2 more weeks in order to comply, and maybe 2 weeks is 4, I don't know. But if you're now not giving them any mechanism to comply, you're forcing them to go to collections earlier. If there's no difference between pay it soon and you won't have to go to collections, and when you gain immediately to collections, then they're going to go to collections earlier, right? They have no option. That's what we suggest. So that 2 week grace, that additional 2 week grace period now disappears. Or are you saying you can pay it in 2 weeks at $195, or it'll go to collections at $195?
I think it goes to collections at $195.
But we are still giving them another 2 weeks of grace.
Is that correct, Carl?
Yeah, probably wouldn't send it off until the 28 days is expired. I'd have to double check the legislation and the regulations. There's certain things we have to comply with in terms of the legislative scheme that's been set up. So I think we pretty much got to stick with, we've got a ticket. Well, that's the other thing. We've got tickets that, well, we can reprogram the electronic ones, and we'll get an extra electronic ticket issuing machine. So it'll be easy enough to reprogram the amount. Yeah, I think we've got to stick with the time periods that are set out in the legislation. So we wouldn't send it to collections until after 28 days in any event.
Okay. So I'm going to go to Councillor Barmier in just a second. Councillor Abbott, could you give direction to us where your thoughts are? This is going to come back next council meeting, so today is not forever.
Why is it coming back next council meeting?
We want the decision. We need the decision now.
Okay, fine. Thank you. We previously discussed this. We discussed less opportunity for staff to need to negotiate with people and going to collections faster. Is that still part of the strategy, or then was a suggestion to get someone else to deal with this?
Regardless, we've still got to provide the legislated time frame. So, whether we invest other resources to assist us handle the flow of disputes is just sort of a different question. Doesn't really pertain to this. Councillor Urban, I'm going to park here for a minute. Councillor Barmer.
Yeah, I have to reflect on what Councillor Bean said, and I tend to agree. So I'm going to change my position. I do think we just need to stand behind our fee structure and provide staff with additional resources and support to deal with the conflict resolution aspect of tickets. Not that I have an answer on how that's done, but I recognize the stress, and I recognize that it might take a certain kind of skill set to deal with that kind of aggravation. So I do think we should stand behind our fee structure and support staff.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmer. Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Barmer has just said.
Okay. It's 3, Councillor Cunliffe's not here. Staff, you've got your direction. Which brings us back to the other piece of the balance of the issues on here. I randomly picked the speaking order for any other comments or suggestions to staff on the parking plan. And the order is Councillors Barmere, Mayor McLaughlin, Councillor Bain, Councillor Abbott. So Councillor Barmere, any comments or suggestions on the balance of the parking plan?
No, I think it's great. And I tend to look at it as a revenue opportunity. Really, I think what other mature cities do is they charge for a fee for service, and we need to just think the same way. So I support the idea of year-round revenue metering and bylaw enforcement to support that.
Thank you very much. For me, and I'm going to page 65 of 272, and it's not like it's pennies, but I was looking at the pricing per hour, and I'm sure Councillor Abbott would suggest that Sunset's a pretty hot spot most days. And why would we be charging $4 for all three of the lots? And that question is to staff when they're reflecting on it. Flip the page. I think there's a small typo on the year 2018, if that could be cleaned up. And where the CAO had mentioned expenses, if you could go meter expenses.
So, sorry, where's the typo?
On the top of page 66. The year is 0.00 2018. It's a micro year.
Yeah.
It's a small thing. I just listened to housing stats. Give me a break. So that's my comments. And I think I'm cognizant of what guidance Council just gave staff. If this appears to be a continual abusive thing coming to the front door, I'd ask the CAO to really bring it back to us, and maybe there's going to be some additional resources put to help our staff on that. Those would be my points, and staff can comment on the parking. The rest is kind of whatever it is, the parking fee for the three lots, and then we'll go to Councillor Green and then Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, the rest of the parking plan, I don't have any issues with. I think it's laid out well, aside from micro years. Yeah, I think I can also add that with the pay for parking and everything, I think we do have enough revenue there or at least my impression is we have enough revenue there to pay for the extra bylaw enforcement officers. And we could certainly look at some help for staff. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to come across as some cold-hearted sot. I understand that people can be difficult to deal with, and sometimes people with a certain amount of skill and demeanor can snuff out a hot temper as fast as anything. But I don't expect that from our staff. So maybe there's something that could be in the works that would help out in that regard.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott.
Okay, so first of all, to Councillor Barmer's statement about revenue, I think this is more about, or at least as much, I appreciate the revenue, but it's really about controlling the parking and trying to keep bad behavior, cars speeding around the village, and all those things we experience on upper part of Bayview Mountain and Sunset on every sunny day. So I just want to make that point for me. It's less about the revenue, it's more about the impact of the community. Peter, when you're looking at the signage, bottom of page 1 there, that area, and I've mentioned this before, on the east side of Bayview, around, I don't know, it's around 300, 250, well, 240 to 280, that whole section is unsigned. There is confusion there all the time.
Sorry, which part?
You know, okay, as you go over the bridge.
You guys want my magnifying glass?
No, from Bayview, past Fred's place, over the bridge, you come down through the dip on the east side there, and there's no signage for the longest stretch there.
There used to be resident parking or permit parking only signage there. We'll have to see what's happened to it. That was the widening section, a widening project that we need to get back to at some point.
And if it is, it's been used by hikers, it is paid parking, but residents can obviously use it with permits. I mean, that might work as well, but it's used by both. Or if you want to do a few spots for permit parking only, maybe that's probably more appropriate. But currently, it's definitely used by hikers. They realise they can park there. Let me just understand this meter. I like the idea of a meter. Put it at the junction of Bayview and Mountain. Is this a different meter to the meter that's currently at Sunset? Can the one at Sunset not take street parking payments as well?
Yeah, it can, but the problem is that some people from Mountain would go up Trudy's Trail as a shortcut, might not go past the meter. As well, the meter at Sunset is $3 an hour, and paid parking on the street is $2 an hour. So the idea would be to provide a meter that issues tickets for $2 an hour.
Yeah, and I know the mayor suggested increasing that parking up to $4, but I'm wondering if they shouldn't be similar. And here's my logic. The cell phone on Mountain is typically, I've had 2 service providers and I walk up, never dropped a call in my life. Bayview, around the school, underneath the wires, that's where you seem to lose the call. And if there's a sign that said you can pay at this, or you can pay at the trailhead, maybe there's a better option to put another meter down there around Bayview. I don't know, rather than the Mountain and Sunset. I do understand what you're saying about Trudy's Trail.
Yeah. Well, the idea of that location was so that it can get anyone who wasn't able to connect and get pay for their on-street parking, whether they were on Mountain or Bayview. And we would have signage along both locations indicating that there is a meter for that purpose. So it may be that in due course that we would have one down at Bayview by the school as well. I don't know, but I thought this was a good place to start.
Okay.
And I thought that the rate ought to be more at the Sunset Trailhead for that parking lot, because it's location versus I think that should be worth more than having to park a kilometer away somewhere down Bayview.
These websites, and I've looked at a few, Andrew sent some links, and I've looked at a few others. They all recommend the same way. If you want to go to Tunnel Bluffs, go to Lions Bay, they give you directions, go straight to the trailhead. If there's no parking, speed back down the hill as fast as you can to try to find the other park. It's exactly what they say. They don't say speed, but they all recommend you do that. And we've got to somehow get in people's heads, don't go to because I think traffic jams there, cars backed up like 8 deep because the front guy can't park and he can't get out and everyone's in his tail. Then they get frustrated, and that's where a lot of this bad behavior is coming from. So I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way to encourage people to stop earlier and not everyone drive to the Sunset Trailhead first.
Yeah, you'd have to put pads, I think, underneath every parking stall at the trailhead, all 15 of them, and then have a digital reader board further down the road that indicates there's 1 stall available or 2 stalls available or something like that. But it wouldn't be feasible to do with a bylaw officer. You'd spend all day there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Resident parking permits. So if you wanted a third one, you used to be able to go buy one for $30 and it lasted for 3 years.
40, yeah.
$40 for 3 years.
Yeah.
Now you're going to pay $30 for 2 years, or still pay $40 and only get
40 for 2, because you used to pay 40 for 1. It's always been $40, even because up until 2 years ago, they were annual passes. Up until the last time they were annual passes, it's always been $40.
Yeah.
Which I feel is a pretty good deal for an annual parking pass, in this case, now 2 years.
Yeah, it's never been raised.
Yeah.
While I've been here.
We talked about raising it 1 to 3 years, but we decided to keep it at 40.
Okay.
You don't think we should raise it, do you?
My concern more than anything is misuse of that. But I mean, I'm told we do a quiet inquiry to make sure that people aren't misusing those parking. It's a lot cheaper than buying street parking. If it's 40 for 2 years. Mm-hmm.
Well, we do make them sign for it when they come in, and we
demonstrate and show where they live,
give their address or whatever.
Yeah, they don't sign for it, but they have to show that they're a resident. We recognize a lot of them, actually. We had someone come in today. We get kind of a surge when they first go out because they need them for the extra cars they have in the household. But we just ask for proof of residence.
I was a little surprised that the street parking is only such a small amount of the actual overall parking.
But only started in June.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Mid-June.
And at $2 an hour.
Yeah, okay, so I think we'll probably see a lot more. Do we have any feel for the fines? How much is on street and how much is in the parking bays?
No,
we don't.
Okay.
Don't presently have a way of the bylaw officer. We don't distinguish whether the ticket was issued in respect of the street parking or failure to pay at a meter, do we?
It's got to be skewed to the street parking.
I would think.
Not enough stalls.
Okay. Yeah, I like this report with the numbers of people coming. It certainly helps to inform people that live in other parts of the village. It's a little different on the Sunset side, or on the trailhead side. So that's good information. It's good to see. Bylaw enforcement, additional bylaw enforcement. When would it start?
April 1st for full time. We're having to go out advertise for new bylaw officers. And we've got one returning officer, and he's actually going to start doing some weekends. So this weekend, as the weather forecast is for sunshine, we're going to have him come in for 6 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. But currently, we still have the seasonal no parking signs up. So
that's right. Yeah.
So they won't come down to April 1st.
Yeah, April 1st. By the time we get the meters and get the Flowbird up and running and all set to go and so forth. So yeah, so he'll be primarily monitoring people parking in no parking zones and resident permit only zones.
I would suggest if you accidentally turn the Flowbird on earlier, you're going to get a whole lot of revenue because people try to pay, even though the sign says don't pay.
Yeah,
they're all trying to give you that money. People want to do the right thing, so
I agree.
Turn it on earlier. They'll be less frustrated if they get to pay than worry if they can't.
Councillor Abbott, I'm going to park you for a second. Councillor Bain.
Just as Councillor Abbott was speaking, it just occurs to me an idea. I don't know if we've thought of it before or if this is whatever. I'm mindful of when you go through a construction zone now, there's a big sign going into it saying words like traffic fines double in construction zones. And I notice people tend to be a little bit slower once they're confronted with a sign. And I'm just wondering if, say, in the entrances to Lions Bay, if we should have something along the lines as parking bylaws strictly enforced, maximum fine $195, just to give them a heads up to, be a little more careful about being obedient.
CAO, do you have a thought on that one? And I'm coming back to Councillor Abbott. Thinking the entrance would be right where the screen is, where the cafe advertising is. On the other side of the bridge, be the primo visibility.
Yeah, we can look at that potential.
I think a fulsome disclosure of what we're really trying to accomplish here. Okay.
I was thinking.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Well, I was just thinking that pre-warning people might take a bit of the bite out of hostile ticket recipients.
I'm with you, Councillor Bain, and so staff's moving in that direction. Councillor Abbott, back to you.
No, I think I was done.
There you go. I did get the answer from staff on this is on page 65 on the colored chart or grid with the parking. You can do the math. I forget Sunset, but let's call it 15 for round numbers. KGB, another 15 or 20. Let's call it conservatively 20. $8 a day, all summer, all day. It's a lot of dough. For $1 more, we uniform our parking fees in the lots at $4 per. I kind of get the street parking because it's not particularly close to a washroom, you know, and sometimes you have to hump a mile to get to the trailhead. CEO, do you have a response for me or your thoughts?
Well, there's a rationale as to why the Lions Bay Beach Park rate is higher. That rationale is that we don't want people parking in the Lions Bay Beach Park all day. We want turnover. It's the parking lot is for visitors. The residents park on the street with their permits. The idea is to provide turnover so that people can come and use the facilities. And we don't want to encourage people being there all day and going out from the marina. So that's why it's higher than the others. In terms of Sunset being $3, you know, for an eight hour maximum, that's $24 for the day to access Crown lands. There's lots of people that are upset that we're charging anything to access Crown lands. There's lots of places you can go that you don't have to pay. There's a few now. There's more and more all the time, but you know, the rates for the most part are pretty reasonable, and the recognition is there that people are looking to get into the fresh outdoors on Crown lands to which everybody has a right of access. And so some people are quite upset that we charge anything. So there's already a feeling that $24 is too much to ask. I think that it's a reasonable amount. I'm not in favor of increasing it at this point in time. With the Kelvin Grove Beach Park, a lot of the users are residents in any event. At both Kelvin Grove and Sunset, the residents don't have to pay for the meter if they've got a permit on their vehicle, but they do have to pay if they park at Lions Bay.
Okay, I'm good with the answer. Thank you. I think last call on this one. Councillors, anything else? Otherwise, I will call the motion.
Just
confirm the recommendation.
One last thought, I listened to you, Peter, why we don't want to make that. I was trying to make that gap bigger between to stop people going to Sunset. If they know it's going to cost them twice as much if they drive another 200 meters, which take the deal now and park on Mountain and stop all that traffic and the traffic jam came on Sunset. Does the sign on Mountain doesn't tell you that you're going to pay more if you get past this?
I'm sure not.
Well, we haven't put signage up yet for the meter.
But no, you wouldn't know that you're paying less to park on Mountain than you are on Sunset, or less to park at Bayview. Would you?
Probably not if you're a first timer.
No. I'd guess if you from multiple times, you might never actually realize that. Anyway, just give some thought to is there some way we can encourage people to park earlier. It's the traffic that's the real issue. You know, driving up the cul-de-sacs, kids trying to play, and then everyone's racing.
Village website. It's got to be there. People are scrolling it. It's got to be some kind of a signboard within the go-to link.
Yeah, you're going to pay more the closer you get. That's what it should be.
With a dinky little map.
So stop now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Good, fulsome stuff. This council's gone from birthing the baby to having a teenager in the second year, and now we're quite mature on our parking plan. Thank you, staff, for the outstanding job, and the whole team that goes in support of this. I will call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Councillor Bain, yes. Thank you. All right. Okay, and she has been waiting for a while, but it is time. Drum roll, please. And if you like the parking plan, you're going to like the preliminary budget. And the recommendation is that the report, 2022 preliminary budget, will be received for information purposes. I'm going to stop there for a second. I'm going to put forward that motion, but council is going to give direction. So it will be a soft resolution on what the next form will look like. I'll put that forward. Councillor Abbott, will you second for me?
Sure.
Thank you. CFO, you have the floor.
So this is so council's second look at the preliminary budget. It was first presented at the February 15th Committee of the Whole. So the operating numbers have stayed the same. I will put through changes for the next meeting to reflect the resolution that just went through with regard to the parking and the full year, some of the added costs plus some of the added revenue. Essentially, this was an opportunity for council to take another look at this budget. I'm going to start with the capital when we go through it this time, just because I think that got a little bit cut off at the last meeting. It's the larger ticket items. And with the plan that as we go through the capital, I would look for council's direction in terms of what they would like to see in the next iteration of the budget and what they would like to fall off. Because at the next meeting, I would plan to bring the 2022-2026 5-year financial plan with capital to that meeting. So I would also need guidance on a tax rate at this meeting if council is comfortable after we've gone through the numbers. But if we go to page 118 of 272 to start with the capital, like I say, maybe just going through discussing it and then council making some decisions or providing guidance on what they wanted to have in the budget. So I wasn't sure if we just wanted to have questions about it, or if it would be worthwhile taking 5 minutes to go through it line by line, if council has a preference.
Perfect. Please continue. I'd like the line by line. I'd like, before we go on to other stuff, if we could establish the capital before we move on to the operating.
Okay. So the building and equipment appraisals, this was an insurance requirement that was new this year. In order to renew our property insurance, we are required to have appraisals on our building and our equipment. So we insured this year through the MIA, and they have a plan where we can get that appraisal for, they negotiate quite a good price, and we pay for it over 3 years. So although it's the $15,800, only 1/3 of it will go into this year's budget. There's no interest charge. They just invoice us in 3 installments. And that appraisal would probably happen in the next couple of months. And then Public Works help, we were going to suggest getting 2 qualified staff for a 2-month period. I believe in the last meeting, it was suggested that we have them start later in the summer if they're going to be doing vegetation and trimming works that we do it after the tree nesting. I think that was Councillor Abbott's suggestion. And this is something that we could pay for with the COVID grant. And same with the public waste receptacles. We were suggesting the addition of 11 bear-proof double bins and concrete pads, and they would be 9 of them are replacements and 2 would be new. And again, this would be a valid use of the COVID grant money, which, by the way, we are expected to have fully expended by the end of this year, 2022, which I can do. This was something new since the last budget. I think maybe the mayor could speak to this in more detail, but he asked me to put something in for a plaque and upgrades for the memorial cairn, the Olympic wall with the plaques outside the village hall, and renaming the native plant garden, which we discussed earlier in the meeting. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Mayor McLaughlin?
No, I think it's place mark's fine. Thank you.
And we've discussed this as well, the engineering traffic review on the CN crossings. This would be a study, I guess maybe the Public Works vendor could speak more to it, but a study that we had discussed that would have to be undertaken in order to even get consideration of keeping the stop signs at the railway crossings.
Thank you very much, Public Works Manager.
If I could, Pam. Yeah, so I'm not sure that I've articulated this fulsomely. The mayor brought this to my attention. So if we decide to leave the stop signs, if we decide to let the stop signs go, we will still need an engineering study to look at the intersections to determine how to properly sign them, where the through path would be, who's forced to stop. Those types of issues will need to be addressed if the stop signs go. So regardless of whether we try to prove that the stop signs are required, or if the engineers determine that the stop signs are not required, we still need to do that traffic study. I don't know if that explains it better, Your Honor.
Pretty clear, and I believe you could repeat the example you gave to me today.
Yeah, so the example is if we remove the stop signs at the Bayview Railway crossing, who has the right of way? People coming from the beach, people coming from 59 or 60 along that road, or people coming down? So if a car's coming down across the railway tracks, who has the right of way? Does he have the right of way going left or right? Does the person on the right have the right of way? Those are the things that the traffic engineers will have to look at.
So for clarity, that's the Brunswick crossing.
That's correct, yeah. But it applies to both the Brunswick and the Lions Bay crossing.
Thank you.
And maybe while you have the stage, you could talk about the drainage master plan, just briefly.
Sure, it's been a topic that's been brought up several times, and this is just a line item to get something going in this year.
Okay.
Thank you very much. CFO, we could stop here and get doing this in bite-sized pieces. We could get council's thoughts and give your guidance on the operational side, which I'm a believer it should be converted into the, it's not capital, it should go into the operating section.
Yes.
You're fine if we stop here and discuss it right now. Thank you. So to colleagues, again, this is on page 118 of 272. I think that there are some items where individually we're going to have to decide what needs to be done. And I'm fine with going individually if we can all do that. I mean, or I can just raise a topic and you can say yes or no or why. Maybe that'd be most expedient. Why don't we do that? So on the first one of building and equipment appraisals, and this is pretty much a requirement. Is that correct, CFO?
Right. Yes.
So again, this is 15 grand. It's certainly not a CapEx. It's an operational issue. I'm in favor of that. Councillor Abbott?
Sure.
And Councillor Bain, are you good?
I'm good.
Thank you. Councillor Brummer?
That's okay.
Thank you. The next two items, which is the public works summer help and the public waste receptacles. In coming up to the last gift of the provincial restart fund, which is the COVID grant, I'm fine with both of these ones, and that's net 30,750 and 29,645. So I'm fine with that. Councillor Abbott, where would you stand?
Yeah, I'm okay with those.
Okay, Councillor Brummer.
Yep, that seems reasonable.
There you go, Councillor Bain.
Same here.
Thank you. The Karen, and this is community amenity, and I'm just using this as a place mark, and this is for the Memorial Cairn. I don't know what Councillor Bain and his work study group, or with the input of the works manager, but let's just call it a spruce up, and perhaps some plate naming for the honoree. Somewhat the same for the memorial or the native plant garden. And lastly, as a custom to do this, is we have 5 Olympians in the village, perhaps some smaller plaquage along our wall, stone wall near the the walkway into the municipal complex. That's kind of just putting it there as a place mark. We're proud of our Olympians. It gives us a chance to honor them in perpetuity. And so I'm going to ask Councillor Bain to look at that as part of his assignment on these two. So the 10 grand is a place mark. I really don't have a clue what the cost would be, but I'm thinking it's not likely to be more than that. Councillor Barmere, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a community contribution. I think it's reasonable.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
I appreciate your comment about not knowing what the cost will be, because I too have no clue at this moment, but it sounds good.
It's a place mark. It's going to come back when you do your work. I mean, you've been around long enough. If there's a number with a 3 or a 4 in it, it's not going to go far. Councillor Abbott?
I think from what we heard earlier, I think the number certainly sounds like it's high, especially if the native plant garden was already budgeted as just a normal metal sign.
Yeah, if I may, the native plant garden signage will come out of our operating budget. To give you an idea, the bronze plaque above the door at Broughton Hall that says Broughton Hall, that was $500 through ornamental bronze.
Okay, so that's all right. So you could drop that. You could drop that to 5, and we'd still be laughing. Yeah, it's fine with me. You good with that, Councillor Abbott? I mean, Councillor Bain's going to come back anyhow. Sure. I mean, yeah, I was thinking it's more like 1,000 and 10,000 was my thoughts. Sure. What's the reduced number? Let's let Councillor Bain not beg too much then. But the one I did want to talk about was Olympic wall plaques. First time I've heard this suggested. Olympians and commemorating them sounds like a great idea. But I'm just not sure why we would single out Olympic sport as opposed to any other. I don't know. I'd never. It sounds like a good idea, but I'm wondering, are there other non-Olympic sports that are just as exemplary and just as worthy? Well, I question who is more worthy than an Olympian, but I get your point. In the days when Olympics were amateur athletes, who, well, we could have a famous hockey player in the village. We could have, I mean, it doesn't have to be an amateur. I mean, it could be an athlete. Anyhow, it was an Olympic theme. Let's just check in with the councillors on that. Councillor Barmere, your thoughts?
Well, I have a little bit of a thought here, and I don't want to sidetrack, but and I don't know what point to introduce this as part of a budget conversation, but we do need to earmark a little bit of money to do part of a grant application that requires a consultant. And I don't know if this is the place to ask for it, but it's far less than what we're putting for signage.
But I will bring it back before we depart this part.
I had a note because that would be operating. I had a note to actually.
So it's going to come back.
Discuss it now in this piece, yeah.
So we're going to go. So back to the Olympic piece, Councillor Barmere.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to, I read this as memorial care, et cetera. I think any kind of community contribution like this and recognition, I think it's a good thing to do. It raises the spirits of our residents. It celebrates various aspects of the community. So I think it's a good investment.
Thank you, Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I concur with all that's going on in this topic.
Okay, I think, well, the pressure's on you. So Councillor Abbott, I'd like to see what the study group comes forward. So Councillor, sorry, you're not a councillor. You should be a councillor. Just not in this municipality. What would you like, CAO?
But just a thought on this. I know that there's going to be some vastly increased requirements having to do with accessibility. There's a new act coming down the pike, and I'm thinking that one of the key things that we may be required to do Probably should have already done it. As I understand it, it was on the books to do when the renovation took place at the office and the hall, but there wasn't enough money, got cut. We probably need to have a rampway to provide access to the village office. So whatever happens up front there, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we're probably going to have to do that at some point. And you're talking about Olympians, and I'm thinking Paralympians and accessibility and recognizing that, but I don't know, just a thought. So dollar wise, it may end up actually costing a bit more, obviously, but the caveat is that there might also be some grant funding associated with the accessibility requirements that are coming down the pipe. So maybe we wait for that. I don't know.
I'm going to suggest we wait. So if we leave this at $5,000 for this category and wait for Councillor Bain to come back, I think we've got our place mark and it's not a big number, and if it's more and it's compelling. So that would be fine with me, and I'll presume yes from the other two. Councillor Abbott, are you good with that it comes back?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Next piece up is the engineering report for the crossing. For me, I just don't see any way to wiggle out of this one. I'd like it to be done for one less digit myself. And
I did say to Councillor Abbott and did promise him that I would do my utmost best to push this number down as far as possible.
Okay, thank you. I'm in favor of this. I'm looking to Councillor Abbott. I think this should be done. You, Councillor Abbott, your thoughts?
Yeah, grudgingly.
Grudgingly, okay, grudgingly, Councillor Bain, are you in favor? Good. Councillor Barmayer, grudgingly?
Yeah.
Thank you. That piece is fine. The drainage master plan, I hate to do this where I'm pitching my stuff. Everybody can have their chance too. I understand what it is. I know why we want it. I know what we need it. We're working on ISL for another project right now. I think this particular one, worthy project that it is, can be kicked down the road, but not too far past that. So I would push this off to next year. And it would take a compelling piece for me to do it. Just because it's this year. I think next year, if this came up with a recommendation from Public Works, I'd be there. Councillor Abbott, sorry to go the same rotation.
Well, I'm not quite sure what this plan is. We discussed it previously, and as I said, he's still working on the plan. Our whole drainage system in the village is one of the things we have to deal with. It's part of what's ruining our roads, probably the biggest contributor. And we just don't seem to be getting there. So I would like to keep it in the budget, but I'd certainly like to understand better what it's going to look like.
All right, so would it be fair to say you're a stay, but you want it fleshed out in a big way?
Well, we've been promised that anyway.
Okay, so let's, at the very least, let's consider that a place mark. Councillor Bain.
I remember when we had the infrastructure committee up and running, drainage kept popping its head up, and the infrastructure master plan didn't really look that much at it. But I think the more I think about our drainage and the rainfall, well, like we had when we first started the meeting here, that I really think we need to get on with dealing with the drainage. There's some places that erosion has been taking place. And an engineering report on it, I think, is a good first step. And I think it's possible that we could get it done this year. And so maybe next year, the council could decide what to do with it, but at least they've got the tools in their toolbox to take some aggressive action. So I'm okay with leaving 50 in right now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Councillor Barmayer.
Yeah, I guess I sort of pull on the same string. I understood we already had this study. We were going to use, maybe this is where I need a bit of clarification from Public Works Manager.
Sure.
Would the master plan be implementing that work, making a plan to implement that work?
I don't know that 50,000 will cover a master plan. But essentially, the first step that we need to take is we need to generate rainfall parameters, volumes of water that our ditches will have to handle, and then follow that up by sizing of the ditches. And that's pure engineering work. So that would be the first step, is obtaining those volumes that our systems would have to catch. The Ocean View study looked at 270 down to Harvey Creek. It didn't look at the top portion of Ocean View. That study alone was 18,000. The drainage for the DWIP project has already been assessed. So those pipes are sized correct according to the volume. So the 50 was to get and flesh out more rainfall data and sizing of ditches and pipes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmer, are you good with that answer?
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Which brings us back, back to the $50,000. I will go and go with the 50 grand for the master plan. I don't have an issue with it that badly. So if I do my math, CFO, I look at the 15.8, I look at the 5 for the cairn, the 30 for the crossing study, and 50, I come up with $100,800. And I would recommend that that goes over to the operating budget, which will put you into a negative category, even though there's a 60,000 surplus. So it'll show a small 40,000 give about surplus. And I would recommend that we, I recommend that on our operating budget that we stay consistent with the 3.5%. So my recommendation is that this gets off capital and goes to the operating side. So I'll ask the councillors if they're fine with that. Councillor Abbott.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt. We do have an additional operating item, the GHG assessments, and we realize that some of the capital that we're talking about down here, some of it will end up in operating as well.
Yep. Okay. That's why I'm buffering up to the 3.5.
But sorry to interrupt, but I was wondering if this would be a good time for Councillor Baumier to talk about his GHG assessments.
Sorry. Could I just pass one last comment on the drainage master plan before we move on to the next thing? I get concerned now when we start talking about another study to look at catchment areas. I really was hoping we could get some more kind of field fit based on some standard details and take care of some obvious drainage issues in various parts of the village, rather than another high-level study that's...
We need to know volumes of water that we can expect. I mean, that's critical in determining how deep the ditches are, over what stretch. If we spend money field fitting and doing ditches that are undersized, we're going to pay for it.
The problem with when we go out and get these catchment area studies is we end up with something that we can't afford. We end up back at Ocean View. We don't do the work because it becomes massive. We can't afford it.
So
at some point, oh, sorry.
Councillor Abbott, I get where you're going with this. Maybe we have a separate section in a future meeting, a near-term meeting?
Sure. I believe we need to spend money on our drainage. I'm not convinced about it.
I think the rest of us would like to see where it's going to and what it potentially might cost. So if you're fine with that, Public Works Manager, we'll stake it in the budget and details TBD, if that's fine with you, Councillor Abbott. And we'll have a hand on whether it's specific areas or the bigger one.
Okay.
Colleagues, is everybody good with that? I'll take silence as yes. Thank you. Okay, so CFO, so I think you've got your changes for your budget on the operating side, and which brings us to
the GHG assessment.
Which brings us to Councillor Barmer. So the last piece, it's just a number. And so who's pitching? Councillor Barmer.
I'm going to try and pitch this one. So we've got an opportunity under the Clean BC Communities Fund to apply for some grant money 75 cents to the dollar to do things such as increased energy efficiency of our buildings, and our community hall would fall under an eligible project, pardon me. So replacement of the oil burning furnace, replacement of windows. One of the key elements of this grant application is GHG emissions reduction study, which is really something a consultant provides, and that's the expectation that the grant body has, is that that's provided by a professional. And it really is quite a, you know, it's a simple exercise for the right person, for the right consultant. And we're probably looking at a number of about $5,000. So that's sort of our buy-in to get to be eligible to apply for this grant. We have to do this GHG study, or we might as well not apply. So I'm basically looking to earmark a little bit of budget for this GHG study so that it puts us in a position to apply. We'd talk about scope beforehand. We talk about a number of things before we actually pull the trigger, but I just want a little bit of money earmarked in the budget for that.
CFO comments?
Yeah, basically it's an ISIP grant, and it is a requirement that you do this GHG study before you can submit the grant. So we can't submit the grant without it. But as Councillor Baumier says, there's a couple of things we have to do first, decide what we're going to do. But also there's an unusual clause to this grant, is they want you to call before you basically apply, explain what your project is. And I think they're doing some pre-screening to find out if you would even qualify. And there is a chance when we do this study, if we can't show that we have the necessary GHG reductions, then we also don't qualify for the grant. But there's a few steps we would have to do to decide. The initial phone call that we talked about, we might, they may suggest that it's not a very good project. So there's a few steps to go through, but we cannot apply for this grant without doing this study. So it's a bit unusual that way, but it is a grant that requires you to put a bit of money in before you can actually submit the application.
So just to be clear, this study is going to be on the hall itself?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And then looking at what our proposal is to see if we would have sufficient savings, because there's a threshold of savings you have to have in GHG to qualify for this grant.
But it's not an overall, it's not overall.
So if I can give you some feedback, Councillor Abbott. So basically it would look at the building envelope energy losses and what we would gain from replacing, let's say, old windows. So you'd get a GHG number savings out of that. It would look at a replacement of the oil furnace with, let's say, a high efficiency heat pump, and then you'd get a GHG score from that. And based on that GHG score, there's a threshold, there's a minimum threshold that we have to achieve with our modifications in order to qualify. So that's kind of the premise behind the GHG numbers. And it looks, you know, we can look at a 10-year or 25-year payback to see, you know, how much energy savings we'd have over 10 or 25 years to justify the capital.
Good.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Barn. I'm fine with $5,000. That's out of place. Market's real. Councillor Bain. I believe that's a yes. Councillor Garner, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, let's take the $5,000 you saved on the signs and spend it on something more worthwhile.
I think it shows our interest here. So that's a yes, CFO. So that goes in. So back to my closing piece before we go to the real fixed CapEx. So by adding this up, I think I had $100,800. Add 5.
Back to you.
Here showing a 60 grand surplus without any tax increase. I would propose a 3.5% tax increase. And that will balance us on the operational side and leave a few bucks left over, but not very much. Oh, the 3.5, it was $62,000 is what we generated out of it. Councillor Abbott, you fine with that?
I had a question, Pam, on the going back to the operating cost quickly on this tax increase when we talk about 3.5%.
Sure.
So on page 96, we've got a taxation 2022 or 2021, you're carrying the same number, 1,736,197. And that's made up of, if we go down to the next page, page 97, it's made up of general municipal taxation, as well as parcel taxes and grants in lieu, correct?
Yes.
Can you remind me what grants in lieu are?
Yeah, grants in lieu, we get those from BC Hydro, from TELUS, and from Shaw. It's percentage of their revenue. So even though they don't have real estate here, it happens with all municipalities. We get 1% of their revenue attributable to Lions Bay.
So
it's called in lieu of taxes.
So when the mayor is suggesting a 3.5% tax increase, is it 3.5% on the 1,580,000?
Yes.
Not the 1,700,000 and up above.
No, it's just on the general municipal property tax.
It's only on the general municipal. Yeah. Okay, so 1% is $1,580.
Yes.
Come to a bare balance.
15,000.
15 grand.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you said 1,500.
I did actually. I mean,
I was going to say, I had a delayed reaction. No, we're low, but we're not that low.
Yeah. But I mean 15,000.
15,808.
Yeah, it's a bare balance, Councillor Rabbit, and it's consistent with us previously, and cosmetically asking for more, just money's so small that just stay where we are. Anyhow, your thoughts, sir?
I think we should obviously tax for our operating costs, and that produces no surplus, and that's the math. And that's what we need to do.
And your thoughts are?
Well, we've had various discussions before about my thoughts on trying to find savings in other areas and trying to keep that down. I still struggle with considering some of the stuff we consider operating costs as operating costs.
Would you be fine with, and I would suggest for cosmetic purposes, we go to 3.5 for the purposes of this meeting, and it comes back and we delve into,
I think that was the intention.
And delve into cost cutting, and I asked CFO to have a hard look, and we all will too. And that would be the focus of the next meeting. Yeah. That's fine with you.
Sure.
Councillor Bain, are you good with that? You're muted.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. So
we're going to place the 3.5 in, and then council will review the operating budget one more time.
Okay, which is fine. So I thought we were going to do this after we looked at everything. No, it's
CapEx.
So the only implication of that is I was going to bring the 5-year plan to the next meeting, which I won't do then because it's based on the 2022 and we haven't set the 2022. And it just means that there's still room in the schedule, but we will have to have a special meeting.
Would you like to do a committee of the whole before?
No, sorry, I was just going to say all we'll need is a special meeting in April to either adopt the budget or do one of the readings. That was all. Or we could also choose to do 3 readings, which isn't best practice in one meeting. So we could discuss that at the next meeting, but it does shift the whole budget schedule forward by a 2-week period.
Let's keep it the way you'd like, but let's know that the discussion Councillor Abbott's brought forward is not going away, it's going to happen.
No, I'm saying that's fine. I'm only saying the implication is I want council to understand we pushed my finance schedule and you will have to commit to a special meeting in April. I think it's a good idea to do this. I'm just saying that we will have to have a special meeting. We'd be very quick, but to do one of the readings.
I will commit us to that. Councillor Bain, you're unmuted, and your thoughts on the tax increase?
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me at this point.
Thank you very much. And again, we're going to be looking at the expense side one more time. Councillor Barmier, if you could unmute, is the suggested tax increase fine with you?
If we're still looking at cost cutting, then why would we be looking at a tax increase now? Well, we pushed the whole thing to the
personally don't think we're going to find much in the way of cost cutting.
Okay, it just seems an odd order to me. That was all. Okay.
Councillor Barmier.
Well, now that the CFO has framed it that way, I'm not sure what to say.
All right.
Okay. We'll let I tell you what, we'll park the tax increase. And there we go. So back to the CapEx, which is back to the bottom of page 118. And I think if we could have the staff run through the items, and then we'll go to council.
So the road paving and repairs, and the Public Works Manager can jump in anytime, but it was a 3-year plan. So we've been trying to increase our road paving with our contract with BA Blacktop, and we've targeted 200,000 for this year. I think there was a specific road we were looking at addressing now.
Yeah, so we're looking at Ocean View from 240 down as far as we can go. As far as the 200,000 will carry us.
Okay. Might as well go on bridge repairs too.
And then the high priority bridge repairs, that was an ISL report that was just very recently done within the month. And they have identified some pretty critical repairs that need to be done. And this is their estimate of what it will cost to do. So again, it's one of those ones that I don't think is optional.
Yeah, so this is the one that I had spoken of at a previous council meeting where the concrete is starting to crack, exposing the rebar, and it's critical.
It's right at the corner of Highview now.
Lions Bay Beach Park Revitalization Project. This is the grant that we have been awarded, and we will start this project this year. And as previously committed in the grant, we will be drawing the money from reserves. Lions Bay Connector Project, again, we've been awarded a grant for that, and our share is 68,000. The Cowan Grove Beach Park Bridge, we had some discussion about that last meeting. It would be the cost of the bridge to access land that currently can only be accessed through private property. One thing I don't think we did explain that the purchase of that could be covered from our restricted land reserve because it provides access to water. But I was wondering if this is something we might want to push and get some public consultation on. I think Councillor Abbott brought up a point, if there's a bridge, then more people will use it. But right now you can only access it by swimming. It was Councillor Cunliffe who sort of had the most information on this, being a resident of Kelvin Grove. So it is something we could defer.
I think there was talk about talking to the Arts Council and potentially fundraising.
Yes, as well. And like I say, it can also come from, it is an allowed use of our restricted land reserve as well, as it provides access to water.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could make a comment here. One thing I think on the preliminary before we make a decision on that would be to have a consultation with the nearby neighbors for the bridge, because there's a possibility that could increase the foot traffic significantly. And I'd rather not have little issues in parts of the community where they're not a whole lot of fun to deal with.
First, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I think when we discussed this one last time, my feeling was there needed to be more than just the immediate neighbours, some consultation and some more thought about this. Kelvin Grove residents are already sensitive to the number of outside town visitors they get in that area. And this is going to be another attraction, in my opinion. Is that really what we want to do? I mean, Councillor Cunliffe was thinking it was a nice thing for residents to use, but I'm not sure that that's is going to be. I can see that being a place where there's not much space on a nice sunny weekend day because it's filled up with people that are going to stop off there instead of going to the cliff jumping, for example, because it's the easier place to go to. I don't know. I just think there needs to be more thought about this one. I would like to see this pushed until it's been considered from various angles.
I think I'm of the same view, Councillor, but I think and that place mark extends to the next meeting when Councillor Cunliffe's here. I think this is her neck of the woods. She's familiar with these neighbors, the highly affected ones. So I think in her absence, I think I'm happy to not make a call on this one tonight and await her thoughts, but I will try to talk to her in the next couple of days. So she's got two full weeks to come back informed. Keep going.
Okay, and then we have a skid steer loader to replace the Bobcat and a mini excavator. And this we would recommend financing with a 5-year MFA equipment loan, which is very low rates of interest. So the annual payment on both of these would be about $20,000. We currently are paying for our public works truck this way, as well as the backhoe, and the backhoe loan is paid this year. So it's good timing. And we would make those purchases as green as possible. And a salter for the flat deck at $12,000. I think we did actually have some discussion about this in the last meeting, but I wasn't sure if there's any other questions.
I guess question for the Public Works Manager. No, I think you said last time that was, I remember correctly, the skid steer that absolutely had to be done because it was
no, it's the Mini.
The other way around.
Yeah, the other way around. The cab on the Mini is rusted through the mounts, so we can't. Yeah. If you lean on the cab, you can push it over.
My thought was, did we do the Mini excavator now and keep the skid steer for a little longer? That's just what I was thinking.
Yeah, both pieces of equipment were purchased at the same time. They're both tier 0, so they're very heavy polluters. So the idea was to replace them both at the same time with the same brand, and go with the highest engine efficiency, tier 4 or tier 5, which is just being introduced in California for emissions controls. There will be other equipment coming in the future, Councillor Abbott. So next year's budget will also have other pieces that need to be replaced.
Okay.
And then the fire department, like I say, some of this will actually be operating, but we tend to put the additional fire department requests all in one altogether. It's just kind of the usual requests, the turnout gear, pagers, and they need mobile CADs for the fire truck. The next one is the forklift and backhoe, and I've been trying to reach the fire chief to get a bit more information on this. They need it for the auto extrication training, and their current forklift, I'm not sure they can even use it. I wasn't sure. Do you know, Nye?
Yeah, so they are using it. It's leaking heavily, and it's spreading oil all over the gravel area. The cost that we recently got to repair it is close to $15,000. It is vital for their Auto X. They use it to move vehicles, to place vehicles, to flip vehicles, so that they can practice using the jaws of life. And then once the Auto X training is done, they use the forklift to move the vehicles off to the side for pickup. So they do use it. It's used for Auto X. The one they have right now is extremely old and in a bad way.
Okay.
Is this the same one they had 20 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Very old.
Okay. The Rescue 63 small engine, that's actually being purchased. It was in the budget last year, but there were just delays in getting it. But I've just shown it here, as I mentioned in the last meeting. I still have to put it in the budget, but we are anticipating some proceeds from the sale of the old truck. And the washer and dryer for the turnout gear, again, that was improved in last year's budget. It has been ordered, and but it was back ordered. So we won't be getting it until probably spring of 2022. And then the emergency building, the CLAP building, retrofit, another grant we have received, and the design is underway on that project. And that was it.
Thank you very much, CFO. If I can steer us pretty directly through this. So for the total, it is $832,000. Pretty much all of this comes from our surpluses and reserves. And there's some borrowing here too. And the CFO, I think I asked you and you told me, doing leasing for the two things doesn't work out as well.
I'm sorry, leasing for which two things?
The skid steer and the Mini.
No.
I'm not sure that you can lease to own, but Pam can speak more to the cost versus outright purchase.
I mean, a short-term AM is fine too, but I mean,
Yeah, no, we do find with the MFA equipment loan from the rates are so much lower than lease rates, and then we own it after 5 years.
Thanks very much.
So it's much better.
Thank you very much. I'll be quick. It's a big list. It's hard for us to fight and put off road paving, priority bridge repairs. I think that while I'm going along with the beach park, the connector and the clap building, I understand there may be escalations in these. So I'm fine with it as it stands. I know that they're going to come back to council. So as a place mark, I'm good. The one odd one is the Kelvin Grove Beach Park piece. Councillor Cunliffe's not here, so I'm not going to suggest it be deleted. I was originally thinking that for me, the chief's auto extrication training, maybe this could be fundraised, but you know, if it's really dead, I guess in the scheme of things, 30 grand is not that huge, so I could probably go there. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, CFO, we don't have to make a hard call on these CapEx rate today.
Well, I guess now not. If we're looking at the operating budget again next week or next meeting, then I guess not.
Okay, then fine. I will. I would take off the bridge for the 24 grand and the 30 for the extrication unit, and leave either everything else the same, and I would be fine with that.
That question.
Yes.
With respect to the fire department's forklift, would it be an idea to finance that through MFA instead of?
We can't because it's used. It can only be new equipment.
Yeah, but get a new one.
Well, that would be really expensive.
Yeah, then
yeah.
The cost of a new one is upwards of 60 grand.
I'm just wondering if I don't know what that looks like on a schedule over 5 years or more or whatever. That might be something to think about. Maybe it's a better way to go. I don't know.
If your math works out between now and then, come forward. So again, just to recap, it's 832 grand of capital. Some stuff is still in progress, so it's hard to make a call. So I'll go Councillor Barmere, Councillor Bain, Councillor Abbott. So again, my piece is just to be quick. The bridge at Kelvin Grove this year is a no, and the auto extrication backhoe is a no too. The rest I would be fine with. Your point of view, Councillor Barmere?
Yeah, I mean, I always want to reflect on the fact that these are budget numbers, and when it comes time to actually purchase, let's say, a skid steer or a mini excavator, we can have a value discussion at that point and hopefully shave these numbers down. So I'm fine with the proposed budget.
Yes, to the heart of your issue, I suspect we're going to be having those discussions with our 3 larger CapEx projects. Councillor Bain, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm sort of with you on the Kelvin Grove Beach. It seems like it's just soon come up, and we weren't really prepared for it. And I think we need to lay down some preparation before we consider it, at least for this year. Your comment about the backhoe, my concern with that is, well, I'm familiar with the thing. It is old, and it was old when they got it. If I remember right, they bought it from the marina when they were upgrading. It's been a lot of trouble for the last 20 years, and if the thing's leaking hydraulic oil or any other oil there, we've got an environmental issue going on. So if we're not willing to go to the 30, I would say put the 15 into it and nurse it along for another couple of years if we can. If it still has the capacity, because it's got to lift the whole car and drive around with it, so you need a good heavy duty one. So I wouldn't want to see them do without or have the thing break down and have an emergency expense.
So you're a 15 versus 0.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Abbott.
I'll just go down quickly. The road repairs, I wouldn't mind a little further discussion on why we chose that section line, and maybe it's not necessary now. I do agree we need to keep budgeting for road repairs, but that looks like on the map, that's the area where the black pipe is, where the drainage is.
Just below it.
Yeah, it's basically from the corner, the switchback corner, down as far as we can go. There are significant dips, significant alligatoring, to the point where in the wintertime, we're going to start tearing up pavement as we plow. So it's the next worst section of road that we've got. So if you, I would ask that you, if you have some time, drive along Ocean View carefully at 30K, 20K,
Yeah.
and just notice the contours of the road and the dips, and you'll see.
Okay, works, manager. You've got the floor, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the area. I just, my thought is there other underlying issues there? We know there's underlying issues there, but I guess we can't afford to fix. That's where we are.
There's underlying issues on every road. So at some point, we're just going to have to pave them and look to fixing those issues else at another time.
Bridge repairs, I'm good with. You explained that last time. So some of these items, just to be clear, we're talking about 800,000, but a lot of the stuff is, you know, re-budgeted or dealt with before. Beach Park we already dealt with. Lions Bay Connector, no one wants to hear my opinion on that. I agree and those are all carried over from previous years. The Calvin Grove Beach Bridge, I think we need a bit of further thought on that, so I'm happy to see that one go out. Skid steer and mini, sounds like this is the best plan forward, the best one to come up with. So no issue there. Fire department gear. I guess it's a little bit, it is what it is. It's every year, it's always such a big number, but we have to have it. If there's no other way of them being trained, I guess they need another second-hand backhoe, but if there's a better way of doing it, fine. And turnout gear, once again, that's been on here for a couple of years. We just haven't paid for it yet, so that was a previous discussion. So yeah, it's not a lot of change. Not grudging yeses, but maybe reluctant yeses on some of them.
I think let's call it grumpy CapEx budget. Councillor Abbott, Councillor Baines pitched the 15K for the auto extrication backhoe. Does that resonate with you? It gives the chief some flexibility, or he can repair it, which I don't know what he's going to do, but he's got something to work with. Your thoughts? I mean, for me, if everybody wants to do this, the 30K, and he's got whatever thing, and it drives him for another, according to Councillor Bain, 20 years, well,
if it's going to get 20 years out of it, I'd say yes.
How long we need, Councillor Bain, how long did the last one last?
That's the only one they've had that I know of.
Since?
And it was here before I retired 18 years ago.
Okay, so, all right, I'll retract. I'll go with the 30 in if he can. Well, I mean, you know, it's like I half starved you by giving you half the budget. There you go. So I'm fine with the 30. I'm Councillor Abbott, Councillor Bain, Councillor Barmere for that.
Yep.
Yes. Councillor Abbott, yes.
Reluctant, yes. Yes.
Yes. Councillor Barmere, I think you said yes. Fine. And so the only out is the beach park, and council's going to be looking at a lot of information over the years he's come home, which I think, CFO, you got all you wanted out of this request. Very good. Anything we're missing?
Maybe a quick clarification of where it comes from. So from reserves or the beach park, Lions Bay Connector.
It's all coming from reserves.
It's all coming from
surplus because we're not taxing for any of it.
So everything's coming from reserves.
Or surplus, yeah.
Well,
other than the borrowing
basically,
piece.
it's not coming from taxation.
Okay. Where are we at here? We want to go on or take a break for a minute. What does everybody feel like?
Much further we've got to go.
A long way. Okay, we're good. All right, let's tough it up for a bit more then. Okay, council remuneration report. And the recommendation is that the report be received for information purposes. Councillor Boromir, will you put that forward? Thank you. Councillor Bain, you're a yes. Thank you. You're not a councillor either. CFO, could you give us a story on this?
Yes, so this comes to council every year per the council remuneration bylaw. Council receives an increase based on the increase in the CPI from the previous year. So this year that would be 2.79%, and that would be retroactive to January 1st. But I had an added piece this year, given that this is an election year. It is sometimes practice of municipalities to just do a comparison to their wages versus other municipalities. And if they feel that they're falling out of pace, this is an opportunity to give an additional increase by council resolution. And that way, the incoming council wouldn't have to give themselves an increase if they wanted to in that first year. So basically, this is to inform you that you're getting a 2.79% increase for 2022 per the bylaw, but you could also have some discussion about whether or not you would like to change increase your salaries to become more comparable, or if you felt that you fall in the right place in comparison to other municipalities.
Thank you very much, CFO. And I can tell council that I asked the CFO to do some investigative work on this because I felt that this council was underpaid relative to the other communities. And the main list is here. And when I did my analysis of, spent a couple hours looking at what these communities look like, it's not just the population, it's the complexity of their communities. We have no commercial areas like Harrison have got significant commercial. I look at Bowen Island with 3,680 people and, you know, Mayor Andrews getting paid 30 and Mayor Belcarra with a population of 643 is making $8 grand less than him. Clearly there's a disconnect here. And then Mayor McEwen of Anmore, whose his population is even far less than Mayor Andrews of Bowen Island. He's getting paid significantly more. My analysis is that everyone seems to have gotten to where they are for the reason that they are where they are. And I think to attract future people that are sitting in our seats, I can see a bump. But at this point, I can't put the motion forward, and I'm confirming that I would be asking that we just receive this information. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I'm pleased to see that we're in the mayor's 71st out of 100, 71st lowest, should I say? And council is 6 places worse. Yeah, we are underpaid if you compare them to others. I personally, I'm quite comfortable with that. And I previously tried to even get this idea of an automatic increase removed, as you will recall, and told I couldn't because we could easily change the bylaw. So I will just receive it. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you very much. Councillor Bremer?
Yeah, I'm happy to receive. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, every time I argue about this one, Tom's got a good answer for it, and I've just sort of given up. I'll receive it. I'm not expecting any more. I feel like I volunteer my time here, and it's a generous honorarium that the village provides to us, so I'm quite content.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Last word on this one, call a motion.
Yep.
All those in favor, confirm receipt. Yes, opposed, no.
Yes.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much, CFO. Next one, and we're picking up some traction here. There's 2 pieces here, and these are things that I so recognize the value of staff's time, and we're about to go into yet another busy season of parking and all the other stuff. But there's 2 pieces that are One is the cash generator, which is Ocean View Road right-of-ways, and the other is our commitment to on the DPAs to move this forward in some fashion. So I've asked the CAO to provide his thoughts, and council could comment on that. So CAO, it is yours.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, I did provide a request for direction report a while back with respect to the Ocean View lands, but there are a number of factors that would sort of need to be assessed in terms of the options that present themselves, whether we continue to pursue the option of seeking some kind of a multifamily development versus whether we explore dividing that land into 3 or 4 single-family lots and go about it. In either event, there's a number of steps that would be required to be taken. My computer's died, so I'm looking for my email note to myself, but without going through all the different steps that would be required, there's a slew of them in order to sort of assess what's the appraised value, what would it look like, and what servicing does it need in order to proceed. There's a whole bunch of things that need to take place. So what I'm suggesting is that the mayor's asked me to come up with a date by which I could bring that kind of a report, and I'm suggesting the first meeting in April. If it can come any sooner, I'll do so, but that's my thought process on that one.
Be fine with me. But in that direction, my sense is that as I thought more about this, I'm thinking because of the topography of the area, without doing a lot of density and kind of in your face density, that my personal view is that whatever the number you come with, this would be a single family lot type site. And I'll ask the other councillors to make comments. Councillor Abbott, if you're good.
Yeah, I think the last time we discussed this, I thought the direction was we would like to understand what the money would look like, what the opportunity would look like on single family lots, because that wasn't what we got before. Yeah. So I think that's the next piece of the puzzle.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, I'm leaning that way as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnard? Thank you.
I agree. So, I did find my note. So the things that we need to look at, we need to review the ISL drainage study for that section of Ocean View to determine the cost of piping in the whole stretch versus individual driveway crossings, analysis of water main requirements, analysis of available space and options for septic systems given the steepness of the land, selective removal of trees sufficient to provide a view analysis, consideration of BC Hydro costs to underground the distribution line in front of the lands if view analysis confirms the concerns that we have about that, appraisal of the land based on 3 or 4 lots versus a whole parcel for multifamily, consideration of road closure process costs, which would be higher than for single lot creation. There'll be no zoning amendment required because the default on, well, no zoning amendment required for single family lots because the default is a single family lot for zoning. Identification of other processes such as RFP for real estate services and the estimated time in the market. Analysis of costs associated with all of the foregoing. So we're not going to have all those things in place for April 5th. Those are the kinds of things that we need to start looking at if you want to go that direction.
I think we do, if I can interrupt. How about we do this? I'm sure I have the concurrence of my colleagues. That's a pretty detailed list and it's very fulsome. Thank you. Why don't we, it's not that compelling that it happens today. How about an extra month? We make that the allowing for everybody's travel plans around Easter, the second meeting in April. Would that work for you a little better? I'm sure the answer is yes.
Well, I'm not sure it is. I mean, basically, I'd be coming to you with some costs on this and some sort of ideas as to timelines and cost, but I'm not going to have any detail on it.
Why don't we go the extra month and make it April?
I was already in April.
Sorry, May. Sorry, make it May. An extra little bit, allowing for the Easter break is fine.
I guess the question is, you know, like probably the biggest ticket item on here is, or one of them would be consideration of undergrounding BC Hydro distribution lines. You know, the question is whether or not you want to allocate any budget to any of these things happening this year in order to prepare lands for sale. So I guess it kind of needs to happen sooner than later. Some of the things we can analyze ourselves in terms of rough costs for drainage and water mains, and get somebody to look at septic availability and on that kind of terrain. But yeah, I'll do what I can for early April.
Thank you very much. On the other piece, which was the hazard and DPAs.
So with respect to that, my suggestion is that, where am I here? My suggestion is that we come up with a date for bringing in the subject matter expert to come to a committee of the whole meeting and have a fulsome discussion with council regarding hazards and development permit areas and all of that. You know, if you recall, essentially the email November the 14th, with materials to review. There was a couple of attachments with a bunch of materials to review to discuss the matter in detail. Being protection of development from geohazards. The idea was to get Matthias Jacob from BGC Engineering to come in. He would provide a short presentation noting his background in dealing with the subject matter and most of his recent work. His most recent work pertaining to climate change and its effect on slope hazards on the North Shore and Howe Sound region. He would segue into a review of the geohazard assessment report that was done for Lions Bay, touching on the fundamentals of the approach taken in the report and the key findings and categorization of the hazards presenting in Lions Bay. He'd provide some analysis of our draft DPA and NHAA guidelines, compare them with methodologies used in other jurisdictions to determine risk tolerance thresholds, and hopefully engender a robust discussion with council on what factors ought to be taken into account when council, as the authority having jurisdiction, considers what factors of safety they feel are appropriate for Lions Bay and what happens if no acceptable level is determined by council. Ideas about how key concepts of geohazard risk management are communicated with the public is another important aspect to be discussed. And what can we do vis-a-vis the province is another one on which he can provide advice and suggestions based on his knowledge and experience. So I did email him to find out availability, but I hadn't heard back as of the time of the meeting. My thought was to suggest that we try and do this at the end of this month, maybe March 22nd, 24th, or 29th. That'd be a Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday. Any thoughts?
It's a pretty light month for me. I'm fine depending on what the subject matter expert says, and his choice of 3 goes to Carla via doodle poll. For the rest of us, that's fine. I'm good. Councillor Abbott, you?
Still have the same discomfort with the outcome of this as I had last time we had it. The previous council directed staff to go back and come up with a different strategy. And it seems like this council hasn't dealt with it in 3.5 years. And it seems like we just getting the same thing come back. I don't know if it's going to have any different outcome. So that's just my reluctance. I battle to see how we resolve this in the next few months and where it goes to. But I guess this council should at least have a discussion about it, given that we haven't even spoken about it in 3.5 years.
Yeah, I think it would really, the most beneficial thing to do would be to review the materials, maybe come up with some key questions that you have. Councillor Barmeyer took a stab at it at the time, asked 3 or 4 really good questions that I responded to. His suggestion was that council come up with questions to ask Mr. Jacob, review the materials and come up with some questions so that we can have a fulsome discussion. And then, you know, that way you can figure out, okay, what do we need to do with this? Why is it important? And I think that's really important. It is really important for council to come to grips with this and to understand why it's important to do so. And I think that having an expert there to answer your questions in a detailed way and to provide insights based on his knowledge and experience is going to be way more beneficial than just going, you know, and having an internal discussion amongst yourselves or asking me questions. There's only so much I can answer. And I think you need to hear it from somebody who is an expert in the field and can provide you with some guidance or some ideas and can answer your questions. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to decide what you're going to do with it. That's not going to change, but at least you'll have a full or a fuller knowledge of what it is you're dealing with and why you need to deal with it.
Thank you very much, CAO Duchon. Councillor Barmier, are you, would it be fine with you to see the subject matter expert on hopefully all the dates mentioned?
Absolutely. I think the more we learn, the better off we're making a decision.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain?
I have reservations still after going through the DPA and issues last time. I felt like we're sort of being guided in a certain direction. A lot of this stuff didn't seem to be, well, how would I put it? It just seems like if you ask somebody with a qualification whether you should do A or B, the way they're trained and everything else like that, and their interest, of course, they're going to default to the safest thing possible. And I don't want to slag the people doing it, but sometimes I think we have so many people stirring up fear and anxiety and everything about risk assessments and stuff that fear seems to be a motivating force nowadays to control people and to get them to do what you want them to do. But and I think with Matthias, I forgot his last name, he was here with the Upper Bayview issue we had some years back, and he's a respectable guy. I admire the guy. I think he's an intelligent guy and everything, but they start talking about how many deaths per 100 could you tolerate, and well, how do you come up with that? I feel like we're not mathematicians, but we're talking about probabilities and things like that we don't have hard facts. So I'm not enthusiastic about it, but I'm not going to plant my feet and say no, but I'm very cautious about hiring consultants to guide us, because they'll guide us in the direction you ask them to guide us, pretty much. So I should leave it at that. Thanks.
So, Councillor Bain, so what I'm hearing is that you're prepared to come to a subject matter expert, one meeting info type thing. And at this moment, we leave it at that.
Fair enough.
Okay. I think that's where the majority of us are. I do get Councillor Abbott's point, so it's what we choose to do with the information after. So I think to that CFO or CAO, if I'm reading this right, if you could put the reach out, see what works, and we'll see if we can get together. Okay, it's convenient for everybody. Thank you very much on both of those. Council members, do you have any issues that either is individually or is actually committees come up to? So as councillors, if you want to have the floor, this is the time. Nothing? Okay, next one up is committees, and is a couple of glasses of water here while I do some reading. And this is item D, the Trees and Views and Landscape Committee. I'm not going to read it all. The tree application number 118-231 Bayview Road, and it's on page 135 of your package. And the recommendation is that the Trees, Views and Landscapes Committee recommends to council, the council approves tree cutting permit application number 118-231 Bayview Road, subject to the following. And it's noted in the agenda and in your package under as sections A, B, C, D, E. One, two, three, four. I'll put forward that as a motion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any discussion on this particular application? I wasn't there, so you got what I've got. Fairly straightforward. No questions? No. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Yes. Opposed, no, please. Yes. Councillor Barmier, yes. Thank you, Terry. Next piece. And this is resolutions. There are none. And this is on, next piece is the bylaws. And this is with respect to the Village of Lions Bay Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw number 408-2008, Amendment Bylaw number 612, receipt of public hearing report and consideration of the third reading. And a recommendation, this I will read. That the request for decision report titled Village of Lions Bay Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw number 408-2008, Amendment Bylaw number 612, 2022, receipt of public hearing report and consideration of third reading issued for the March 1st regular council meeting be received. Second part is that Village of Lions Bay Official Community Plan Designation Bylaw number 408-2008, Amendment Bylaw number 612, 2022, as its second reading and following public hearing be amended as follows. A, that Schedule A be limited to the regional context statement as amended, and that pages from other parts of the official community plan be deleted from Schedule A. B, that the second paragraph on the fifth page of Schedule A be amended by striking the phrase "impacts are hard to quantify," end of quotes, and substituting the phrase "impacts have not yet been quantified," end of quotes. Item C, that the third paragraph on the fifth page of Schedule A be amended by striking the phrase, in quotes, "the next OCP update will," end of quotes, and substituting the phrase, "the municipality will continue to." D, that the first paragraph on the fourth page of Schedule A be amended by adding the following: "We are proud to have played a supporting role in the creation of Canada's 19th UNESCO Biosphere, the Atchison Howe Sound Biosphere Region." Item E, that the fourth paragraph on the sixth page of Schedule A be amended by striking the phrase "a draft land use strategy that explored a variety of additional housing forms and locations within village boundaries was not well received by residents," in the quotes, and substituting the phrase "the draft 2014 land use master plan explored a variety of additional housing forms and locations within village boundaries, but was not well received by many residents," end of quotes. Item F, that footnote 4 on the 6th page of Schedule A be deleted, as it references text that is no longer included in Schedule A. Item G, that the bullet point regarding trails on page 1 of Schedule A be removed from the village asset section to the village attribute section. Item 3, that Village of Lions Bay official community plan designation bylaw number 408, 2008, amendment bylaw number 612, 2022 be read a third time. And
that should be read a third time as amended.
I beg your pardon?
That should be read a third time as amended.
Be a third time as amended. Thank you. And item 4, that a letter be written to the Metro Vancouver Regional District Board requesting acceptance of the Village of Lions Bay Regional Context Statement as amended by Village of Lions Bay official community plan designation bylaw number 408, 2008, amendment bylaw number 612, 2022, as at approval of third reading. Councillor Abbott, can I have you put forward that motion, please?
I will gladly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain, can I ask you to be the second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. CAO, any comments to flesh out the details?
So the proposed amendments address items that were raised by various residents in terms of comments that we received, and I think add clarity and improve upon the regional context statement as amended. Happy to go into any of them if anybody has any questions, but otherwise I think that the motion itself speaks for itself, and I'm not sure that there's much more for me to say about it. The preferred option is that they be adopted as read out, and that will give effect to the publicly expressed strong desire to amend the OCP's regional context statement in support of rural land use designation under the Metro RGS to better reflect the distinct character of the village as a rural community rather than as an urban one. So that rural vision still needs to be fleshed out somewhat, but I think this is probably a good place to start.
Thank you very much, CAO. Councillor Barmeyer, any comments?
No, that summarizes it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain, any comments?
No comments now.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott, I would ask you to make your comments, and when you've concluded, I'd ask that you call the motion.
I have no further comments. I will call the motion.
All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please confirm by saying yes.
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 Thank you. Congratulations, everyone, on that. Okay, next up, who doesn't love pesticide control? All right, this is item B, and this is before you on page 167, and that pesticide control bylaw number 430, 2011, amendment bylaw number 613, 2022 be adopted. This is the final reading. Councillor Abbott, can you call a motion or put forward the motion?
Yes, I'll put forward the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bain, can you second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
One question. On page 170 of 272, it's got in red letters here. What is different about this office consolidation, pardon me, versus the original? Or is this just a generic disclaimer now?
Sorry, what's different? What's the difference between what?
Could you repeat that, Councillor Payne? Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, and page 170, there's a big section, couple of paragraphs in red that have been added, starting off with office consolidation. And I'm just wondering if this is what the difference is between an office consolidation and the original version, or is this just a general disclaimer? I don't remember.
It's a general disclaimer. It's just, you know, it's just something that every local government puts in to a consolidation because there's a whole formal process to doing it that nobody does unless they're going to court. So it's the only time you really get into going through each bylaw. And this is a representation of the original bylaw as amended. It can be amended several times. So as you make changes, you highlight what the changes are, and then you've got your consolidated bylaw that contains all of the foregoing amendments. So the bylaw then gets read as a whole as amended. So I'm sorry, I don't have the. You talking about page 2 that says this is not an official version?
Well, on our agenda package, it's page 170 of 272.
Page before that, yeah. It carries on to page 2.
Yeah, so it's just like a disclaimer that you can't use this version in court, basically. But for all intents and purposes, it's what the bylaw, how the bylaw reads after any and all amendments.
Okay, so if you go to court, your version then has all the track changes, not listed as track changes, but actual fact.
Well, generally speaking, when you go to court, you just bring every single bylaw that pertains to, you bring the original and every single amending bylaw, and they're certified copies, and you provide all of them. And then the judge can make sure that what you've given them as a consolidated version is in fact in accordance with the amending bylaws.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Thanks. Thanks for the answers.
Thank you very much, CEO DeJong. Councillors, any other questions before I call a motion? Last chance in this one. None. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm yes.
Yes.
No, thank you. Yes. Thank you, Chair, everybody. Next one, which is, thank you very much, CEO, is bylaw number 614, and this is relative to the Board of Variance. And just a second.
Did we skip the pesticide?
No, we just did pesticide.
Oh.
We're on item number C. You slept through pesticide? How's that possible? And grow hair like that? Give me a break.
Did you buy one?
Item C. And this is also the final reading that Board of Variance bylaw number 502-2016, bylaw number 614-2022 be adopted. I'll put forward that motion. Councillor Abbott, can you be my second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Nothing more to say. Any questions for the CAO on this one? Nope. No, they're getting done. Call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Opposed, no. Yes. Yeah. Good. Sure, I'm whistling through these. Carla, did I just call the motion? Yes. Good. Thank you, carried. Thank you. Which brings us to the first of the bylaw enforcement office policy, bylaw officer bylaw amendment. The bylaw enforcement officer bylaw number 506/2016, amendment bylaw number 615/2022 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. I will put that forward. Councillor Abbott, will you second with me?
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. I think this is pretty straightforward. CAO, any quick notes on this one?
It just basically adds the ability of the fire chief to designate certain other persons to assist with enforcement where necessary.
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions? No, there being none, call a motion. All those in favor, please confirm by saying yes. Those opposed, no.
Yes.
Good, thank you very much. And I'm just going to pause for a second. There we are, found it. Which brings us, there's going to be some changes because of our discussion on the parking plan here. And I'll just give the sheet over to the CAO in a second. If there's any questions.
So my takeaway from the earlier discussion on the parking plan was that council's not in favor of proceeding with bylaw 616, which would delete the increase in penalty to $240 after 28 days. But correct me if I'm mistaken on that. No? Is that more or less the understanding? Or?
I think it was.
Yes.
Okay, so then I guess the direction would be to not proceed with this, with giving this bylaw any readings.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to excuse me, correspondence. And Councillor Bain, I can smell the end here. So you have the rotation, and again, I give you the offer of accepting the items in the general correspondence or pulling one out and then addressing the resident ones. Your call.
Okay. Pardon me, just get my computer to catch up. Okay. Yeah, for information, we've got a couple of them are pretty much the same from the village of Chase and the town of Oliver in supporting Lilloette's request to the federal and provincial governments to provide better forest management for wildfire protection practices in BC by reviewing and assessing current policies and guidelines. And I think it's more pertaining to people who work in the woods, where we have a slightly different situation. So I don't know if this really applies to us, but I'm open to be corrected on that if anyone wants to comment. Otherwise, we'll just receive for information. G2, Variety, the children's charity, about the show of Hearts Telethon. Well, that passed last weekend, so I think we're a bit late for that. Our MP, Mr. Weiler, has got Canada Learning Bond and public transit investment. Interesting reads, I suppose, but we can accept that for information unless you choose otherwise. And we have one from Lucy McPhee. Interesting. Addressed to Neville Abbott, if you don't mind me reading your correspondence, Councillor Abbott. Interesting little. Do you want to? Somebody want to say something on that, or?
Sorry, keep going.
Okay.
That's a no.
Yeah, just a nutshell. Yes, Lucy McPhee has written. She's a schoolgirl in grade 10, I think she said here. She lives in Prince Edward Island, and her teacher gave her an assignment to find a community similar to hers. And I guess we're a little bit bigger than her community. It asked a number of things about us, and including what color our dirt is, as hers in Prince Edward Island is red. And I find that quite enlightening. So she would like some feedback. Maybe we could send her a token or something. She could say a sticker, a pin, or a map of our area, or we could get a vial of brown dirt if she wants. So I can respond to her if you like, or if Councillor Abbott would prefer.
I think on behalf of Councillor Abbott, you have the ball, sir.
Yeah, put on a flag.
That's flags. You can send her a flag.
Okay. I'll look into that and I'll get back to her then.
Thank you very much.
And the staff have some stuff in the office that we can send to.
Okay. Do I bring a trowel? No, never mind. We've got resident correspondence. Oops, I'm getting not caught up. 265. Where'd it go? Whoops, my computer's gone goofy. Here we go. 265. The writer, this one is talking about cats and in conjunction with wild bird life and everything. Brings up some interesting topics that people don't really talk about too often, but according to him, 1 to 4 billion birds are killed by house cats annually. I didn't know that. Anyhow, I think the lesson here is to take care of your cats and not leave them roaming around and bugging the birds. Next one is...
so what were you going to do with this one, Councillor Ben?
Well, I didn't say because I don't know.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
If you speak to the bird friendly group, they might give you some opinion on their stance on it, which is more about education, promoting good behaviors than legislating things. And you'll probably find that they believe the bigger issue in Lions Bay than house cats. There's other issues that are more likely to cause danger to birds, which we are dealing with. So maybe if you speak to them, or you know who to speak to, Eddie, get some help.
Yeah, could do, or I could contact them, or well, you're pretty close to them, so I'm almost, if I talk to you, I'm almost talking to them, aren't I? But yeah, we'll get
Councillor Bain, we're gonna leave this with you, Councillor Bain.
Okay, fair enough. Next one, the next three are all about parking, and specifically noting the parking at Mountain Drive this time. We sometimes get them at Ocean View, but it's through the angst I get in these letters that my opinions is formed on this. And somebody here had a pretty good comment. Well, first of all, the first one was I want to start by saying thank you to the Village Council for all your work on the parking issues for the past 2 years. I know there are no solutions that will please everyone, and I anticipate you taking the time to listen to our feedback. And down into the bulk of the letter, it's got the comment, it used to be a summer only problem that is now affecting us year round when the weather is nice. And so I'm glad that we're able to meet their concerns with bringing in bylaw officers a little early. The other two are very similar, comes with pictures. I don't know, have we adequately answered your questions by our discussions, or I'll take your direction. Do they need individual letters?
CAL, any thoughts on these ones?
Well,
you don't have to talk.
I don't have it in front of me. My computer's dead. But I recall there was somebody who had a specific request for something on Mountain Drive. So we have to take a look at it, I think. And I don't remember what the other one was.
So I think Bradshaw and Casperson for that, to their looking for parking redesignations, I think.
Yeah, I think the one theme here in these ones, becoming more and more common now, is we take the seasonality out of it. That goes a long way to resolve it. People are being frustrated, even at this time of the year now. They're loath to go shopping on a Saturday because if they come back home and it's a sunny Saturday, they can't find a parking spot. So I think we are dealing with those issues, and we will need to take out the seasonal thing so that we will be restricting or start ticketing people that park in resident parking spots without resident stickers, which is one of the biggest problems in the last month or so. It's become common knowledge that there's no bylaw. I even tried to stop one guy personally from parking in a parking only spot, and he looked at his buddy and the other guys said, "I ignored him, shrugged his shoulders and walked off." Said they got no bylaw. So I think that's the biggest thing. We'll fix that, and maybe reply in kind.
I think just to bring us right, Councillor Abbott and Councillor Bain. So if staff could respond on Little and Bradshaw, because I think that's within the purview. We park, what to park where, and that kind of stuff. Rebecca Casperson, I've answered, and it's more about hydrant stuff. So I've got this right. So if that fits with Councillor Bain and staff, then we'll say that's an end of correspondence. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then we have any new business, which there is none. And there are still some members in the gallery. This is the time we have for you. If you'd like to speak, now is the time. Unmute. You don't have to turn your camera on if you like, but if one of the members wants to come forward, Mr. Sretsky, if you unmute, you have the floor.
Good evening. It was good to hear you solving some of the problems today. Definitely was a hefty few hours. I sympathize with that. I wanted to comment on this housing need assessment report. It's disturbing to hear. Actually, I read the report before the meeting and I was happy to see two councillors doing the same. And frankly, I must say, I've never seen so much rubbish in a report, meaning no facts that relate to the matter. So I hope the village didn't have to pay for this report. Perhaps we should make the comment to provincial government not to pay the auto for this rather than amend it. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, we did not pay for it. UBCM did. And get ready for this. We need to do another one in 5 years. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sretsky. There's still one or two members of the galleries on. If you'd like to come forward, please do so. Again, you don't have to turn your camera on, just unmute and come forward and we'll give you a chance. Nope. Okay, thank you very much. One more thing, gallery, and if you're there, you're gonna like the last one. Carried something from our closed session. And I'd like to report out the following from the closed section. Council confirmed that we would seek consideration of Lions Bay's request at the April Planning Committee of Metro, the April Planning Committee meeting at Metro, and the May board meeting, either with or without intimating potential rejection of Metro 2050 hangs in the balance. That didn't read very well.
Without. Should have just stopped at May board meeting.
Thank you. Ah, yes.
To qualify, you're talking about the RCS amendment.
Yes, there we go, the RCS. Well, that's why I took out the wrong sheet. Thank you, that's the RCS amendment. So it is going to go, just I'll interpret quickly. Council spoke of the strategy, and this was the outcome of that. So we'll go forward and have just right to the timing of it. And that's all that was reported out. And I think it's time to close the meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Abbott and Councillor Baines is second. All those in favor, a hearty aye.
Aye.
We'll say good night to everybody and good evening. Bye.